Chapter 1349. The dragon's roar spread throughout the canyon. It was as if it had been covered in 1,000 years of wind and frost. It was filled with the aura of iron and blood, causing one's heart to tremble. Chu Luiyue only felt a buzzing in her ears. A heavy pressure crushed down and instantly reached the depths of her heart. It was almost suffocating. She quickly raised her eyes and looked forward. In the long and narrow canyon, there were cliffs on both sides. In the middle there was only red sand rising with the wind. It was a vast expanse. Could it be that a dragon is here? Everyone was shocked. However, the expressions of Liang Xiaokong and the people from Spirit Charm Mountain were a little strange. It was as if they were shocked, but there was also a hint of fear in their eyes. That's not a real dragon. Liang Xiaokong opened his mouth. His voice was hoarse and his throat was tight. Not a dragon? But this dragon's roar and the pressure contained within it can't be faked. Oh. Elder Hua Feng, that's the place Liang Xiaokong tricked us into going. The man in the lead of Spirit Charm Mountain sneered. It's extremely dangerous there. We advise you not to take this risk. Seeing that he didn't seem to be faking it, Elder Hua Feng and the others exchanged glances. This commotion was definitely not ordinary. Perhaps there really was some secret hidden there. But from the reaction of Liang Xiaokong and the others, it was indeed very dangerous. Rui, what do you think? Rui pondered for a moment, but there was a trace of hesitation in her heart. Of course she wanted to go. After all, they didn't come here from afar for fun. But Spirit Charm Mountain and the Liang family had suffered heavy casualties. Chuyu, what do you think? The rest of the people also looked at Chu Luiyue. After these things, they seemed to have unconsciously treated Chu Luiyue as their backbone. When they encountered something that they couldn't decide, they would ask for her opinion. Chu Luiyue nodded. Go. Elder Hua Feng, you can't go. Liang Xiaokong couldn't care less at this moment. He shouted anxiously as he struggled to stand up. Kneel. The men next to him shouted angrily and pressed Liang Xiaokong down with their swords. Feeling the cold touch on his neck and the blood slowly oozing out, Liang Xiaokong was so scared that his face turned pale and he quickly knelt down. Even though it was humiliating, his life was more important in this situation. That side is indeed very dangerous. Elder Hua Feng, why must you do this? Previously I didn't know. That's why so many people from my Liang clan were implicated. However, since I've already suffered a loss, how can I just watch as you guys go over? Liang Xiaokong really didn't want them to go over. It wasn't easy for him to escape from there. How could he follow this group of people back? The leader of the Lingyun Mountain frowned as well, his face filled with disapproval. However, this had nothing to do with them as long as the other party promised not to interfere with Liang Xiaokong's affairs. If that's the case, then we'll take our leave first. As he spoke, he waved his hand and was about to leave with Liang Xiaokong. Elder Hua Feng nodded. Liang Xiaokong's eyes suddenly widened. Elder Hua Feng and the others weren't planning to stand up for him? What he didn't know was that Elder Hua Feng was already in a lot of trouble. They hadn't even found the elders and students of their own academy. They had just escaped from the nine-tailed Black Crow's siege. How could they have the extra energy to care about others? Liang Xiaokong was Liang Xiaoxiao's brother, but none of them were Liang Xiaoxiao's master. As for the Liang clan, could it be that the Lingyun Mountain was easy to deal with? Not to mention that there was indeed a grudge between them that had dozens of lives. At this time the best choice was to not interfere and ignore them. I know the safest way to go over. Elder Hua Feng, if you can help me once, I can go back with you. Every moment counts. He was sure that after these people left, the people of the Lingyun Mountain would immediately kill him. Elder Hua Feng hesitated for a moment. If Liang Xiaokong could bring him along, it might be much more convenient. However, he really didn't want to get involved in this mess between them. No need. Chu Luiyue laughed. Elder, if you're worried, I'll lead the way. Seeing that she seemed very confident, Elder Hua Feng couldn't help but feel much more at ease. All right. In any case, Chuyu had always been in charge of this journey. Although the journey was dangerous, he was still safe and sound. Therefore he trusted him very much now. There's no time to lose. Let's go. As Chu Luiyue spoke, she walked forward. Everyone quickly followed. Liang Xiaokong was dumbfounded. What was going on? There were so many people, but they actually listened to a brat? That Chuyu, could it be that he was some powerful figure? But he had never heard of him before. Wasn't this courting death? Even the people of the Lingyun Mountain were shocked when they saw this scene. Could it be that this youth was the one who had the final say in this group of people? But other than looking delicate and clean, there was nothing particularly outstanding about her. Another dragon's roar sounded. This time the sound was clearer and louder than before. The pressure was naturally stronger. A trace of hesitation flashed in the eyes of the leader of the Lingyun Mountain. In fact, when they went over just now, other than being attacked and killing more than half of them, they didn't see what was going on at all. After thinking for a moment, he walked in front of Liang Shaokang. Swoosh. A long sword was pointed at Liang Shaokang's forehead. As long as it moved an inch forward, it would be completely finished off. Liang Shaokang widened his eyes in horror, and a trace of despair surged in his heart. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure from the corner of his eye. Xuanhuan? Jiang Jiwan's body stiffened, and then she continued to walk forward as if she didn't hear anything. Seeing her reaction, Liang Shaokang, who was still a little suspicious, immediately confirmed her identity. Xuan, it's really you? He looked at the woman who walked past him in disbelief. Her clothes were messy and her body was covered in blood. Her left sleeve seemed to have been burned by something, and there was a large twisted burn on her arm. Her aura was weak and her face was haggard. She was completely different from the smiling woman in his memory. However, Liang Shaokang didn't have time to ask anything else. Xuan, please help me. Because of Liang Xiaoxiao, they were familiar with each other. Moreover, Liang Shaokang had always been interested in her and tried to please her. It was a pity that Jiang Jiwan had always kept him at arm's length. She should be the one that Liang Shaokang was most familiar with among these people. Hearing Liang Shaokang call out her name, Jiang Jiwan was annoyed, but she had to pull herself together and said hesitantly, "Third young master Liang, it's not that Xuan doesn't want to help you, but, as you can see, I can't say anything. Everyone listens to Chuyu." Liang Shaokang blurted out, "Then help me beg him." Digression, human potential is really endless. I've been writing for 5 years, but I haven't been able to use my phone to write. Until today, I'll have a meal and check my phone in the afternoon. If there's still battery, I'll continue to write. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 1350. Jiang Jiwan looked at Liang Shaokang in disbelief. What did he say? He wanted her to help beg Chuyu? Dream on. It was already hard enough for her to lower herself for his sake, let alone Liang Shaokang, who had nothing to do with her. She didn't get along with Chuyu, and there was also a barrier between her and Shiruer. The only people she could plead for were Elder Hua Feng and the others. But that was also because she was a student of the academy. The attitude of the few elders was very clear just now. They had no intention of helping at all. At this time, if she jumped out to speak up for Liang Shaokang, wouldn't she be looking for trouble? Third young master Liang, I'm really sorry. I'm just an ordinary student of the academy. As for your matters, I really can't do anything. With that, Jiang Jiwan lifted her feet and was about to leave. Liang Shaokang was anxious. Wait. You can't abandon me like this. If anything happens to me, Xiaoxiao will definitely not forgive you in the future. Jiang Jiwan sneered. Liang Xiaoxiao. Even if the person who was about to be killed was Liang Xiaoxiao herself, she wouldn't take a second look, let alone Liang Shaokang? She walked forward without looking back. Liang Shaokang's eyes were about to split open. Jiang Jiwan. To think that Xiaoxiao and I have always been so good to you. I didn't expect that in the end, we raised an ingrate. Just you wait. Liang Shaokang didn't finish his sentence. Bang. His body stiffened and he fell straight to the ground. Bright red blood gushed out from his neck and quickly dyed it red. Then it was quickly swallowed up by the red sand. His eyeballs popped out as he stared at Jiang Jiwan's back. Jiang Jiwan faintly felt a chill coming from behind her, and a layer of goosebumps appeared on her back. However, she didn't turn back in the end. She only walked forward quickly and caught up with the others. The man leading the Lingyun Mountain team looked meaningfully at the figure in the distance. Then, he retracted his gaze and coldly glanced at the dead Liang Shaokang. Clean it up. Yes. Chu Luiyue and his group continued to move forward after passing the boulder in the middle. The further they went, the deeper the ravines on both sides of the cliff. The lines crisscrossed and the texture of the skin was distinct. The temperature was also much higher than before. Chu Luiyue's heart unconsciously gave birth to a trace of irritation. The blood in his body surged as if it was about to rush out directly. Taizu's voice was particularly deep and powerful, like a basin of ice water pouring down on Chu Luiyue's head, immediately calming him down a lot. The origin power here is modeled and complicated. Too much of it will disturb one's mental state. Be careful. Chu Luiyue rubbed his temples, a trace of lingering fear in his heart. Thank you for your reminder, Taizu. With these mixed energies gathered together, even if one didn't purposely devour them, it was inevitable that one would be affected while walking among them. She was really careless. Elder, remind everyone to set up a barrier. There's something wrong with the origin power here. As Chu Luiyue spoke, a brilliant golden color quickly appeared on his body and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Elder Hua Feng responded with a solemn expression and turned around to instruct everyone seriously. He had also noticed that something was wrong just now, but he wasn't sure. A large part of this power seems to be emitted from the red sand. I don't know what's going on. Elder Hua Feng muttered in a low voice. Chu Luiyue's eyes drooped slightly, but the dragon bones buried deep underground flashed in his mind. Perhaps, look, what is that? Shirui suddenly exclaimed. Chu Luiyue put away his thoughts and looked up. In front of him, a cliff blocked the path. It seemed to be the end of the canyon. On the mountain rock there was a door. Tall, magnificent, solemn. The door was completely red, like a red-hot soldering iron. Terrifying heat emanated from it, setting off rolling heat waves. The surrounding space seemed to be slightly distorted. It was terrifying. On the ground not far from the door, dozens of corpses were scattered everywhere. Most of them were already damaged and incomplete, and they looked terrifying. Chu Luiyue immediately understood that these should be the people from the Spirit Charm Mountain and the Liang family who had died here previously. It seemed that they were almost wiped out before they could even enter the door. What is this? How can there be such a place in the northern region of the primordial world? It looks very strange. Didn't you see that those people are all dead in front of the door? If we want to go in, it should be very dangerous. Don't you feel that although it's hot here, there's always a gloomy feeling? Everyone discussed in low voices. Chu Luiyue was about to walk forward when he was stopped by Elder Hua Feng. Wait, wasn't this brat a little too reckless? There were corpses everywhere in front of him, but he could still walk forward without changing his expression? Was he really not afraid of death? You stay back. I'll go and check out the situation first, Elder Hua Feng said in an unquestionable tone. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh, but he didn't argue with him. Elder, be careful. Elder Hua Feng nodded and walked forward. Everyone gradually quieted down and looked over. The closer he got, the more Elder Hua Feng could feel the astonishing pressure emitted from the door. The blood in his body seemed to be flowing at a much slower speed. He frowned. In the end, Elder Hua Feng stopped about 20 steps away from the door. He had already sensed the killing intent surging out from inside. His many years of experience told him that if he continued forward, it would be dangerous. However, he stopped for a moment before walking forward. Before his footsteps landed, a strong wind suddenly attacked him. Elder Hua Feng was shocked in his heart, and then he punched out. He actually chose to face it head-on. Boom. Two powerful forces collided fiercely. A loud sound was heard. Sand and stones flew everywhere. Strong winds howled. The red sand quickly gathered into a vortex in midair, erupting with a powerful suction force. Elder Hua Feng was caught off guard and took a step forward uncontrollably. His heart trembled. He retreated without hesitation. However, it was easy to come, but it wasn't so easy to leave. The sand contained abundant power, especially the sand near the door. When it gathered together, the power was so great that even Elder Hua Feng found it difficult to resist. Elder. Shirui was about to step forward when she was stopped by the white-browed old man. Second miss, wait here for a moment. This old man will go. Before he finished speaking, his figure had already disappeared from the spot. In the next moment, everyone saw him appear beside Elder Hua Feng. Swish. He held a long saber in his hand and slashed down fiercely. A crack instantly appeared on the vortex that wrapped around Elder Hua Feng. Let's go. Elder Hua Feng saw the opportunity and immediately ran back with all his strength. However, just as the two of them were about to escape, the vortex formed by the red sand suddenly expanded. The vortex turned into a storm and surged forward. Digression. I don't know if I can reach the 5th update. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1351. Quickly retreat. Elder Hua Feng shouted loudly as he realized that something was wrong. A trace of shock flashed through Shirui's eyes. Then she turned around without any hesitation. Let's go. It was better for them to escape at this time. Everyone had an intuition that something was wrong. So, they accelerated their retreat without any hesitation. However, it was too late. Whoosh. They didn't have enough time to escape. Suddenly, the red sand behind them rose with the wind, and formed a huge barrier. It had completely sealed off their escape route. An elder's expression hardened as he leaped forward, raising his sword as he charged forward. Clang. With a crisp sound, the long sword in his hand actually broke into two pieces. The rebounding force hit him and sent his body flying. Then he fell to the ground. His complexion turned pale and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Everyone who was about to follow him stood rooted to the ground in shock. This is just a collection of red sand. How can it be so terrifying? They didn't have time to react. Suddenly, a huge suction force surged from behind and wrapped them up. A young man from the meteor sect couldn't resist it. He fell down and was surrounded by the red sand. Then he was quickly dragged to the back. The coarse ground quickly cut through his clothes. He was frightened and struggled with all his might. He wanted to get out of this situation. However, he only aggravated the injury on his back. Faint blood stains appeared on the ground wherever he was dragged. However, they were quickly absorbed and disappeared. Brother Zhao. Xianxia jumped up and chased after him. However, everyone was trapped in this space filled with red sand. Their strength was suppressed and they couldn't use even half of their strength. Moreover, they weren't a match for this terrifying force even if they used all of their strength. Xianxia didn't have time to touch anyone. She had already lost control of her body. She wasn't the only one. Everyone on the scene was the same. They were like insignificant ants that were being dragged to the door. Xianxia felt as if her body was being restrained by some kind of force. She couldn't break free and couldn't move. There was only a vast expanse of red in front of her. She couldn't see anything else. She felt as if her body had been squeezed out of shape. Her internal organs were squeezed together, and she felt as if they would explode at any time. Suddenly he felt a sharp pain in his hand. She looked down with difficulty and found that the back of her hand had been cut by a coarse piece of sand, and blood was slowly seeping out. Although she was only a rank 8 warrior now, her physical strength was comparable to a rank 9 warrior. This sand could actually cut through her skin and flesh so easily. One could only imagine what kind of shocking power it contained. A strong force hit her and her chest shook violently. Blood flowed out of the corner of her mouth. At this moment she suddenly understood how the corpses in front of the gate came to be. I can't be so passive anymore. Xianxia clenched his teeth and circulated the force in his body with great difficulty. However, the energy around her was too strong, and the amount of energy she could use in her body was too little. If that was the case, he might not even be able to unleash a single god-stuffing fist. Right at this moment, another dragon roar entered his ears. Xianxia's heart skipped a beat as he looked up. This time she finally heard it clearly. This sound came from the canyon. It came from the ravines on the cliffs, from the red sand that filled the sky, and from the corpses that were either exposed or buried deep underground. Right at this moment, Xianxia's body suddenly erupted with a tyrannical wave of energy. Bang! The big door under the mountain rock opened with a sound. Digression, I'm getting off the train later. There's no need for that today. Tomorrow at noon, mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1352. Xianxia's body was instantly sucked in. Bang! The sound of the door slamming shut came from behind. At the same time, Xianxia's body was also thrown to the ground by a strong force. All the bones in her body felt like they were about to fall apart. It was painful. She propped herself up and looked up. This was an incomparably wide cave. On the red and gray rocks, there were several fist-sized pearls inlaid, emitting a faint glow and illuminating the surroundings. And on the empty ground in the middle, there was a tombstone. From a distance, Xianxia could still clearly feel the heavy pressure emanating from the tombstone. She held her breath and looked around her again. There was no one. Other than her, there was no one here. And the door was tightly closed. No one else came in? Xianxia frowned. She stood there and waited quietly for a moment, wanting to listen to the movements outside. But other than her heartbeat, there was no other sound. This thick and heavy door seemed to directly isolate everything from the outside world. Xianxia thought for a moment and finally walked forward. She stood 5 steps away from the tombstone. It was an ordinary-looking tombstone. It was grayish-white, thick and simple. It was about the same height as Xianxia, but it was blank without a single word. And other than this tombstone, there was nothing else here. It was flat and flat. Xianxia stared at the tombstone for a long time, but she didn't see anything unusual. Just as she was filled with doubts, the water droplet in her dantian suddenly began to spin slowly. That was where the ripple came from. Soon, the surrounding energy of heaven and earth began to surge towards her and quickly entered her body. Outside the door, the storm stopped. Everything calmed down. The people who were still wrapped in the red sand were now thrown to the ground. A moment later, Elder Huafeng was the first to come back to his senses. He calmed his breath, got up and looked around. Although some people were injured, their lives were not in danger. After reading it, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. Where's Chuyu? Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Chuyu? Wasn't he just as one of the elders spoke, he was surprised to find that the figure beside him had disappeared. Taking a closer look, everyone was there except for Chuyu. When the door opened just now, he seemed to have been sucked in. A low, uncertain voice came from the side. Just now, when the red sand filled the sky, everyone was trapped. They couldn't even guarantee their own safety, let alone the safety of others. Therefore, not many people witnessed that scene with their own eyes. What? Elder Huafeng's heart sank as he turned around. The red door was tightly shut. If he hadn't heard the sound of the door opening and closing just now, he wouldn't have believed this excuse. How could this be? Everyone escaped the calamity, only Chuyu was brought in. What should he do now? Why does it have to be him? Although Chuyu wasn't his disciple yet, in Elder Huafeng's heart, he had long treated him as his own disciple and doted on him. Now that he was in a predicament and his life and death were unknown, he was naturally extremely worried. Among us, he is the only rank 8 warrior, could it be? At the side, Jianghu, who had just stood up, carefully wiped the dust and blood off her face and asked softly, "You mean Chuyu is like this because his strength is too low?" Elder Huafeng asked in a deep voice. Jianghu could hear the dissatisfaction in his words and immediately shook her head. She explained nervously, "Elder, that's not what I meant. I'm just worried. After all, so many of us are still fine, but only junior brother Chuyu. This really can't help but be suspicious. If it wasn't for this reason, what else could it be? Those who were able to come here, which one of them wasn't gifted? Which one of them wasn't outstanding? Only this Chuyu, who was only a rank 8 warrior, actually followed them. Not only did he come, he even ordered everyone around as if everyone should listen to him. What? Now, even the heavens couldn't stand it anymore and directly locked him in. Who knew what kind of place was behind that door? It was still unknown whether Chuyu could come out or not. Elder Huafeng sneered in his heart. He was very clear about Jianghu's thoughts. Regarding this matter, she didn't laugh out loud on the spot, which was already extremely restrained. In her heart, she probably couldn't wait for something to happen to Chuyu. Even if he is only a rank 8 warrior now, his strength and ability are not something that ordinary people can compare to. If it weren't for him, we would probably still be pursued by those 9-tailed black crows. Jianghu's face stiffened. When Elder Huafeng said this, it was undoubtedly a slap to her face in public. Everyone rest here first, Elder Huafeng ordered. Then he walked towards the door alone. Shi immediately followed with a solemn expression. Elder, what do you plan to do now? Find a way to open the door and bring Chuyu out. Elder Huafeng's answer was simple and straightforward. Shi frowned and glanced at the door. Of course she also wanted to do this, but the key was, how could that door be so easy to open? Just by approaching it, she already felt the pressure. Without even trying, Shi could guess that they couldn't open this door with their bare hands. But if they left it alone, Chuyu was still inside. Thinking of the terrifying storm from before, Shi still had lingering fear. I wonder what Chuyu's situation is inside. Judging from the commotion just now, it wouldn't be so easy to deal with. No matter what, we have to give it a try, Elder Huafeng said solemnly. As he spoke, he had already walked to the door. Then he took a deep breath and raised his hands. Several streams of light flew out and quickly intertwined in midair, forming a huge silver Xian formation. Because he had just been injured, forcefully mobilizing his strength caused the blood in his body to surge. He slowly and firmly swallowed the bloody taste between his lips and teeth, his eyes staring fixedly at the door in front of him. Today he had to break this door. At this moment, a stern shout was heard. Who is it? Shi was stunned for a moment and turned around. In the canyon, a group of people was walking towards them. It was the group of people from Spirit Charm Mountain that they had just met. Shi's heart skipped a beat. They had left and returned. They had clearly said that they were going to leave, so why did they suddenly come back? So it's you guys. The elders recognized the identity of the people who had come and immediately became vigilant. Why are you guys back? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1353. Elder, don't be so nervous. We're just here to take a look. We don't have any other intentions. The man in the lead cupped his hands politely. However, Elder Huafeng and the others didn't really believe this excuse. They had clearly left before, but now they suddenly came back. They didn't come back because they were bored. The people from Lingyun Mountain looked at each other. At first, they really wanted to leave, but after dealing with Liang Shaokang, they couldn't find the end of the path no matter how hard they walked. In addition, they wanted to know the situation here, so they came back in the end. Previously, they had stayed at a relatively far position so they could clearly see everything that had happened just now. The most shocked one was that Chuyu was brought in. This was because they had encountered similar dangers when they were here previously. However, at that time, almost half of their people were dead or injured, and the door didn't open. Elder Huafeng, if you don't mind, we can help you try to open this door. The man in the lead didn't mind their vigilant attitude and continued. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone looked at each other. Elder Huafeng also frowned. Really? Just by relying on their own strength, it was indeed very difficult to open that door. If they could have external help, it would be great. Although there were only about 10 people on the other side, they were all powerful people. Perhaps they could really help. To be honest, we didn't open it just now. When we saw this door open, we felt regretful. If we can open it together, it will be beneficial for both of us, right? The man in the lead was honest and directly said his thoughts. Elder Huafeng stared at him for a while before finally saying, "Okay." Inside the door, it was silent. Chu Liyue sat cross-legged quietly with his eyes closed, constantly devouring the surrounding energy of heaven and earth. Unlike outside, the energy here was very pure, so there was no need to worry about the manic situation from before. The water droplets slowly rotated, restraining all the energy. It was like water flowing into the sea, calm and silent. As time passed, Chu Liyue's aura continued to strengthen. Soon it was night. Elder Huafeng and the others stood in front of the door with grim expressions. At this moment, the sky had completely darkened, and the surroundings were dark. Only the door emitted a faint red light. It was like the gates of hell, cold and eerie. The atmosphere was tense, and the air seemed to freeze inch by inch. We have tried all kinds of methods, but we can't even get within 3 steps of this door, let alone open it. Elder Huafeng finally spoke, and every word he spoke was like a heavy stone that smashed into the hearts of everyone present. Many people had helpless looks on their faces. They had indeed tried their best. However, there were some things that couldn't be done. No matter how many methods he came up with, none of them worked. "Elder, are you planning to give up?" Shiruer asked with a frown as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. Elder Huafeng fell silent. Of course he did not want to give up. Chuyu was still inside and he did not know whether he was dead or alive. He was the one who agreed to bring her out. If he couldn't bring her back safely, he would feel really bad. He was still waiting to take him as his disciple after the matter in the northern region of the wilderness was over. But they were indeed unable to open the door. Even if all the people from Spirit Grace Mountain moved together, they were unable to move the door in the slightest. At this moment, an elder at the side suddenly exclaimed. In such a quiet atmosphere, this sound was especially abrupt. Elder Huafeng frowned and looked over. "What's wrong?" That elder raised his head in shock. He was holding a green jade token in his hand, and his fingertips were trembling slightly. Huafeng, Danqing is looking for us." "What?" Elder Huafeng was shocked and immediately ran over. "What did Danqing say? Where is he now?" That elder handed over the green jade token in his hand. "Just now, my token sensed Danqing's news." Elder Huafeng took the token and took a closer look. He found that there was indeed an additional star on it. "Danqing and I once went out together. In order to make it easier for us to contact each other, we left this behind. But this matter has passed for many years. If I didn't see this just now, I would have almost forgotten about it," the elder explained in a low voice. His face was still filled with shock and joy. "At the very least, this means that Danqing is still alive. As long as we follow this, we should be able to meet up with them." Everyone's previous dejection was swept away, and their spirits were much higher. After being in the northern region of the primordial world for so long, other than Jianghu, they hadn't seen anyone else from the academy appear. They were almost in despair. Now that Elder Danqing's news had appeared, they finally saw a glimmer of hope. "Wait, this time won't be like the previous time, right?" Another elder asked with some lingering fear. Previously they thought that they had found Elder Bo Yen, but in the end, it was all for naught. "If this time, probably not." This news can only be sent out by Danqing's own power. So there's basically no problem. Hearing this, everyone secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Elder Huafeng's heavy and oppressive mood finally eased a little. But soon after, his brows furrowed again. It was a good thing that Danqing had sent back news. But on their side, there was still Chuyu trapped inside? It was impossible to abandon Chuyu here alone. The others followed his gaze and also thought of this matter. They couldn't help but fall silent and look at each other. Elder Huafeng thought for a moment and returned the green jade token. Respond to his message and see if he can come over. We can't leave for the time being. That elder nodded. Okay. After saying that, he asked again. Huafeng, how long do we have to wait here? If Danqing couldn't come over then, they couldn't wait here forever. After all, this was the first time they had received a message from the academy since they came here. Elder Huafeng closed his eyes. Let's wait and see. In fact, he wasn't sure either. Xuanhuan, you said that Elder Danqing and the others were separated from you for the second time, right? That elder suddenly raised his head and asked. Jianghu was standing not far away, but it was as if she didn't hear anything. Her eyes were staring blankly at the ground, and no one knew what she was thinking. That elder raised his voice again. Xuanhuan? Jianghu came back to her senses, and her expression was still a little absent-minded. All right. The situation was critical at that time, so we were separated. I don't know, where did Master and the others go? That elder nodded. Don't worry, we should be able to meet up with your Master and the others soon. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1354. After saying that, the elder noticed that Jiang Jiwan's face seemed to have turned paler. He couldn't help but ask with concern, Xian, what's wrong? Jiang Jiwan forced a smile. No, nothing. I'm just feeling a little uncomfortable. It was indeed difficult for her to feel comfortable in such a sorry state. Then you should rest well for a while. Originally he was too lazy to say this, but who asked Jiang Jiwan to be one of Danqing's most beloved disciples? When they met and Danqing saw Jiang Jiwan's current state, he would probably be in a bad mood. They still had to give each other face. Thank you, elder. Jiang Jiwan lowered her head again. No one knew that her hands were tightly clenched in her sleeves. Her sharp nails dug into her palms and almost bled, but she didn't feel anything. How could Master and the others are still alive? And they even contacted this side. What should I do? If both sides really meet, then, how should I explain? Great nervousness and fear surged in her heart, causing Jiang Jiwan to almost suffocate. The night in the northern region of the Great Desolate Land was always very short. Everyone only rested for a while before the sky was already bright. After some rest they recovered some strength. Elder Huafeng stood in front of the door with his hands behind his back. His old eyes were fixed on the door. Elder, do you feel that the energy here has become much calmer and gentler since Chuyu entered yesterday? Moreover, that dragon's roar hasn't been heard again. Shiru walked to Elder Huafeng's side and asked in a low voice. Elder Huafeng nodded thoughtfully. You noticed it too? If not for this, they probably wouldn't have been able to stay here peacefully yesterday. However, this calmness made him even more worried about the situation inside the door. It had been so long, but there was still no movement from inside. It's not a good idea to keep waiting like this. Shiru muttered and suddenly thought of something. By the way, Elder, does Rongxiu know that you guys are here? He shouldn't know. Elder Huafeng pondered for a moment. Before we came here, Rongxiu didn't seem to be in the academy. What's wrong? Shiru shook her head. She just thought that if Rongxiu was here there might be a way. After all, his relationship with Chuyu was not shallow. According to his temperament, he should have a way to deal with this kind of situation. Unfortunately now, forget it, I'll take advantage of this period of time to adjust my body's condition. If Chuyu still doesn't move after a while, Elder Huafeng gritted his teeth. Chu Luiyue was naturally unaware of the situation outside. She put all her energy into cultivation. After some time she finally opened her eyes slowly. Taizu, do you know what time it is now? In a trance she actually felt that a long time had passed. Usually, Taizu would remind her in such situations. But this time she waited for a long time but did not hear any response from Taizu. Taizu? Taizu? Chu Luiyue shouted in her heart again. Taizu's voice finally came slowly. About a month. Chu Luiyue was shocked. On one hand it was because she thought that only a few days had passed at most. Who knew that it had already been a month? On the other hand it was because Taizu's voice was exceptionally weak. Chu Luiyue had been with Taizu for so long, but she had never heard him speak in such a weak voice. It was as if all his strength had been exhausted, and he was only left with his last breath. Taizu, what's wrong? Chu Luiyue asked anxiously. I'm fine. I'm just a little sleepy. Taizu seemed to want to force himself to stay awake, but it didn't have any effect. In fact, ever since he entered this canyon, he had been feeling sleepy. However, he was originally a remnant soul, so logically speaking, it was impossible for him to feel this way. In addition, the canyon was filled with danger, so he didn't mention this to Chu Luiyue. Unexpectedly, as time passed, this feeling didn't lessen. Instead, it became more and more serious. Especially after entering this place, a sleepiness that he had never felt before surged up and almost drowned him. If Chu Luiyue hadn't called out to him, he would have fallen asleep and didn't know when he would wake up. Taizu, are you okay? Chu Luiyue was still worried. Ever since they met, she had never seen Taizu like this. Could it be that there's something wrong here? She couldn't feel it clearly, but she felt that it was similar to the cultivation places. However, judging from Taizu's reaction, that wasn't the case. It's nothing. I'm just sleepy. Everything else is fine. Taizu's voice became even weaker. Don't worry about me, I'll be fine after sleeping for a while. Chu Luiyue frowned. Then, if you feel uncomfortable in any way, tell me immediately. Taizu responded in a low voice. The surroundings fell silent again. Chu Luiyue looked at the wordless tombstone not far away. Crack. There was a crisp sound. A tiny crack appeared at the top of the wordless tombstone. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. She quickly took 2 steps forward. There was only a deep black in the crack. Other than that, nothing else could be seen. There were no energy fluctuations. However, Chu Luiyue couldn't calm down. This tombstone that appeared in the canyon of the northern region of the primordial world was at least 1,000 years old. After so many years, this tombstone had always been fine. Why did it suddenly crack after she came here for a short while? Chu Luiyue reached out her hand, but she instantly felt a biting cold aura surging out from it. Boom. Chu Luiyue quickly set up a barrier in front of her. Crack. The barrier instantly shattered. A terrifying aura came over and flew toward Chu Luiyue's face. Chu Luiyue's body flickered with a golden light, and the pure gold sacred armor was instantly summoned. In the next moment, that force collided with Chu Luiyue. Her chest shook and her body was instantly sent flying. She fell heavily to the ground. Moreover, she drew a long distance above the ground. Bang. Her back slammed against the door, creating a loud bang. Boom. Chu Luiyue spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, the people who were waiting outside the door heard the commotion and looked at the door in shock. There's movement inside. Elder Hua Feng was delighted and was about to rush over. As long as there was a sound, it could basically prove that Chuyu was still alive. However, just as he took a step forward, a few strange sounds suddenly came from both sides. He stopped in his tracks and looked up at the canyon in front of him. The mountain walls on both sides began to crack. A large piece of rock rolled down from above. A look of panic flashed across his eyes. Everyone, retreat immediately. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1355. Rumble. An earth-shattering sound rang out as the rock rapidly rolled down and smashed into the canyon. Then, before everyone could catch their breath, more and more rocks began to peel off the mountain walls and fall into the canyon. Bang, bang, bang. Countless rocks crashed into the canyon. No. Elder Huafeng's eyes widened. Then, he watched helplessly as the path in front of him was completely blocked by these piles of rocks. As for the door, it was completely hidden behind the rocks, without the slightest gap in sight. He was anxious and immediately wanted to rush over. However, before he could move, more and more rocks began to crush towards him. Helpless, he could only retreat again and again. The situation of the people behind him was not any better, because the same situation was happening on their side. Someone cried out in alarm. This canyon is about to collapse. At the same time, Chu Luiyue slowly wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and stood up. Probably because of the protection of the pure gold sacred armor, she did not suffer any serious injuries. Standing here, she could vaguely hear the chaotic sounds outside. It seemed to be, something happened in the canyon? Chu Luiyue pursed her lips tightly. She glanced back at him. The door was tightly shut, and there was no sign of it opening. After a long while, the commotion gradually stopped. Her heart seemed to be hanging by a thread. I wonder what the situation outside is like. After thinking for a moment, she walked towards the tombstone. At this moment, the attack had already dissipated. The surroundings were quiet as if nothing had happened. Only the crack on the wordless tombstone reminded her of what had happened here. She stood in her previous position again. Suddenly, she was startled and raised her eyes to look around. The concentration of origin power here seemed to be much stronger than before. Chu Luiyue closed her eyes and sensed it carefully. Sure enough, she looked at the tombstone in surprise. Could it be, did this power come from there? What kind of secret was hidden inside? She pondered for a long time and finally decided to continue. With her current strength, it would be difficult for her to leave this place. She wanted to see what would happen in the end. The riot in the canyon finally stopped. Rocks piled up and smoke and dust rose everywhere. Red sand flew all over the sky, making it almost impossible to see anything clearly. Everyone gathered in an open space that was barely able to support themselves and remained silent. Many of them had wounds on their faces and bodies, and they looked very miserable. Thinking about the situation just now, they were still in a state of shock. Who would have thought that the canyon would collapse all of a sudden? Everything happened too quickly. More importantly, the road leading to the door had been completely blocked. If they wanted to open the door, they would have to clear away all the rocks outside. But how was that possible? Even if all of them joined forces, it would still be impossible. Elder Huafeng stared blankly ahead, and a trace of despair gradually surged in his eyes. There were several cuts on his face and body, and blood was flowing out. His clothes were also torn in several places. But at this moment he could no longer care about himself. In fact, his mind was completely blank as he looked at the scene before him. In this situation, how was Chuyu going to get out? Digression? I guess I won't have time to update today. I'll make up for it when I get back. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1356. Shirui are asked in a daze. Elder, what should we do? The previous situation was already troublesome enough, and now this happened. It was almost hopeless to bring Chuyu out. Huafeng, we can't stay in this place any longer. Behind him, an elder walked forward and said with a frown. Although the chaos had temporarily stopped, who knew if it would continue in the future? They had dodged quickly just now, but it didn't mean that they would be so lucky every time. Moreover, the door in front of them had been completely sealed. Everyone looked at Elder Huafeng, waiting for his decision. After a long pause, Elder Huafeng said, "Everyone retreat first. I'll go take a look at the front." Elder Shirui called out to him, her heart filled with worry. Although she was also very worried about Chuyu, it was really dangerous to let Elder Huafeng go alone. It's not safe here. You guys leave first. I'll be back soon. Elder Huafeng looked at her with relief, then turned back and said to the elder, Qing Danqing will be here soon. Danqing might be here soon. Take them to a safe place first. Okay. The elder responded, then turned around and left with his people. Shirui wanted to persuade him again, but after thinking about it, she swallowed the rest of her words. The people from Spirit Grace Mountain looked left and right. After thinking for a while, they finally decided to retreat first. Jianghu retreated with everyone. After taking 2 steps, she couldn't help but look back. In the canyons, stones were piled up and smoke and dust filled the air. The people trapped inside should never be able to come out, right? Inside the door, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged with her eyes closed, crazily devouring the energy around her. The water droplets in her dantian spun faster and faster. The surroundings were silent and time slowly passed. Unknowingly, more and more cracks appeared on the tombstone. The concentration of origin power in the entire space also became denser and denser. Chu Luiyue seemed to be tireless, allowing the energy to pour into her body and flow along her limbs and bones. Until a certain moment, she vaguely felt an invisible barrier. Middle stage 8 stage. Surprise flashed across Chu Luiyue's heart. Her cultivation speed here seemed to be much faster than in the outside world. Although it couldn't be compared to Pingmin Mountain, it was still extremely outstanding. Unknowingly, he had reached the point where he was about to break through. At that moment, Chu Luiyue had already sensed that the space-time flow here was different from the outside world. He did not know how much time had passed outside. Generally speaking, those who could form different time flow rates were all god domains. This thought flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind. She quickly put these thoughts away and began to focus on preparing for the breakthrough. Let's meet up with Danqing first, then go find Bo Yen and the others. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1357. As soon as these words came out, many people were shocked. Then, you mean, As Shi spoke, she glanced back at him meaningfully. She thought that Elder Huafeng would choose to stay here. How could Elder Huafeng not know what she meant? But according to the current situation, this was the best choice. They had been waiting here for a long time and had tried all sorts of methods, but they still couldn't open the door. Now it was even more impossible. Only by finding Bo Yen and the others and working together might there be some hope. Although his heart was also filled with worry, there was no point in waiting here and doing nothing. The elders looked at each other and expressed their agreement. Shi thought for a moment and finally nodded. Elder Huafeng looked at the group of people from Lingyun Mountain. He took a deep breath, took a step forward and cupped his hands. Everyone, this old man has a favor to ask. The man in the lead was slightly moved. Elder Huafeng is too polite. If you have any instructions, just say it. Elder Huafeng said solemnly. Now that we have left, I'm really worried about leaving Chuyu here alone. Therefore this old man would like to trouble everyone to stay here for a while. If Chuyu comes out or if he encounters any situation, I would like to ask everyone to lend him a hand. Lingxiao College will be very grateful. Everyone from Lingyun Mountain looked at each other. They had already seen that Chuyu was very valued by Elder Huafeng and the others. But they didn't expect him to be so important that Elder Huafeng would personally plead for him. This Chuyu? Where did he come from? Previously they said that he was only a rank 8 warrior. Elder Huafeng is too polite. The man in the lead smiled and returned the greeting. Since you've personally asked, we will definitely help you. On one hand, they did want to stay here and see the situation. On the other hand, it was indeed a good thing for them to take this opportunity to get closer to Lingxiao College. This matter was a win-win for them, so there was naturally no reason to refuse. Thank you very much. Elder Huafeng heaved a sigh of relief. Even if it was for Lingxiao College's sake, these people would not sit idly by. Now, as long as Chuyu persevered inside, Elder Huafeng, this Chuyu doesn't seem to be your disciple. Why did you? The man leading the group from Mount Lingyun finally couldn't help but ask. Elder Huafeng smiled. He works for Rongxiu. The members of Lingxiao College and the Meteor Sect left together. After the people of Spirit Charm Mountain rested for a period of time, they decided to wait and see. They were simply too curious about what was behind the door. Furthermore, in order to enter that place, more than half of them had died. If they couldn't go in and check it out, they would feel some regret in their hearts. He just didn't know if the door would open again. What would happen to that Chuyu? Chu Luiyue had almost forgotten everything in the outside world. At this moment she was completely immersed in her cultivation. After breaking through to the mid-stage of the 8th stage, she did not stop at all and continued to devour the energy around her. At that moment, the tombstone was covered in cracks. It looked as if it would collapse at any moment. As more and more cracks appeared on it, the concentration of the energy of heaven and earth in the surroundings had reached a crazy level. Chu Luiyue didn't even need to move, and the force rushed into her body. The aura on her body also rose rapidly. If it were anyone else, they might be overjoyed. However, Chu Luiyue gradually felt uneasy in her heart. Because the energy here was simply too abundant. Every cultivator's physical body could only withstand a limited amount of energy. Once that limit was exceeded, the body would not be able to take it. More seriously, it might even cause a certain degree of damage. Although she had that water droplet and could devour all the excess energy, but who knew when this would end? Here she could barely feel the passage of time. There was only so much energy that it was about to overflow. Under such worries, Chu Luiyue continued to break through and reached the peak of the 8th stage. However, everything didn't stop. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that every part of her body was undergoing an astonishing change. And the tombstone was still emitting a steady stream of energy. The dense force gathered together and condensed into liquid on the stone wall above her head. It was on the verge of collapse. Chu Luiyue was especially worried about something. After such a long time, there was still no movement from Taizu's side. He seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. Chu Luiyue called out to him a few times, but he didn't respond. If it wasn't for the fact that she could feel Taizu's aura, she would have thought that something had happened to him. This place, it was indeed strange. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. Perhaps Taizu had been here before? At a certain moment, the water droplet in Chu Luiyue's dantian finally stopped spinning. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes with a solemn expression. Because she was about to try to break through to the 9th stage. For any cultivator, this was an extremely important hurdle. After her rebirth, Chu Luiyue had fantasized about this day countless times. However, she had imagined countless scenes, but she had never thought that she would be preparing to break through to the 9th stage in such a place and under such circumstances. Dumpling. Chu Luiyue called out in a low voice. A reddish gold flame flashed past. Dumpling appeared in front of her. Protect me. Dumpling clearly realized that this matter was extraordinary, and her expression was very serious. Swoosh. Blazing flames flew and Dumpling's figure instantly changed. Chapter 1358. What's going on? Someone couldn't help but mutter. Ever since they came to the northern border of the great desolate land, the sky had always been gray and they had never seen such a scene. It seems like someone is preparing to break through? As soon as these words came out, they were opposed. How is that possible? Isn't there only one Chuyu inside? We don't even know if he's dead or alive now, not to mention, we can't see what's going on inside. Maybe he's really breaking through? Who can say for sure? That's true. After all, didn't everyone come to the northern region of the Great Desolation to gain experience here? Everyone fell silent and looked at each other. The door was locked and sealed by huge rocks. They couldn't see it even if they wanted to. However, from the looks of it, it did seem like someone was about to break through. Let's wait a little longer. The man in the lead frowned and looked at it with one hand behind his back. When Elder Hua Feng and the others left, he asked them to take care of Chuyu. Now that Chuyu was involved, it was still unknown whether it was a blessing or a disaster. Did any of you see the situation clearly? He suddenly asked. Was Chuyu at the front? No. A tall and thin man beside him shook his head. At that time, Elder Hua Feng and Shiru of the meteor sect were in front while Chuyu was behind them. Then why was he the one who went in later? At that time, everyone was wrapped in the storm. That Chuyu seemed to have been suddenly swept in. And after he went in, the door immediately closed. At first, they didn't think so, but now that they thought about it, everything seemed a little strange. Let's wait and see. Yes. The man in the lead looked up at the gloomy sky. The storm was coming. Elder Hua Feng and even so many people from Lingxiao College were worried about Chuyu who was locked in the door. But perhaps, that Chuyu had his own good fortune. The people waiting in the outside world felt that every minute and second was unbearable. As for Chu Luiyue, she had completely ignored the time and was wholeheartedly preparing to break through to the 9th stage in one fell swoop. Her body was like a bottomless pit, constantly devouring the energy around her. This power flowed through her limbs and bones, nourishing every inch of her flesh and blood. Imperceptibly, the strength of every part of her body was increasing at an astonishing rate. The tombstone was already covered in cracks. Streaks of black ravines crisscrossed, as if they were filled with a terrifying power. Once released, it could devour and annihilate everything. The 8 lines on the water droplet were extremely beautiful. Boundless origin power surrounded him like a tidal wave. Chu Luiyue closed his eyes tightly, his thick and long black eyelashes trembling slightly. Just like the wings of a butterfly, a gentle flap could set off a huge wave of wind. Roar. A dragon's roar suddenly whistled out from the tombstone. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Even the power in his body seemed to be affected by the dragon's roar. It became restless, as if it wanted to break free from his body. Bang! Dumpling looked up to the sky and let out a shrill cry, melodious and holy. It fought against that dragon's might. With Dumpling's help, Chu Luiyue's situation immediately improved. She quickly condensed the origin power in her dantian and fiercely collided with the water droplet. Boom! A powerful impact spread out. It instantly filled Chu Luiyue's internal organs. An intense pain swept through her entire body. Digression. Try to read as early as possible at night. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Jianghu held her breath as a trace of resentment flashed through her heart. What she hated the most about Shiru was that she was always so arrogant and always wanted to get to the bottom of everything. She was always against her. I did pass by here before, but I was only focused on running for my life and couldn't care about anything else. Now that he thought about it, it should be quite safe to return from here alive, right? As she spoke, Jianghu looked at Elder Hua Feng with some uneasiness. Elder, I'm doing this for everyone's sake. I don't have any other intentions. No one knows what's at the other end of this canyon. Are we going to keep walking here? Shiru smiled coldly. It's better to keep walking forward than to go somewhere else, right? Who knows if it's really safe or... Elder Hua Feng raised his head to take a look. Let's go forward and see. Jianghu bit her lip, but she didn't dare to say anything and could only reluctantly agree. It seemed that she could only think of a way later. Rumble. At this moment, the ground of the entire canyon suddenly shook violently. What's wrong? Everyone immediately became alert and looked at the towering cliffs on both sides, afraid that the canyon here would collapse again. If the previous incident happened again, they probably wouldn't be able to withstand it a second time. Suddenly Shi-Ru-Er sucked in a cold breath. Elder Hua-Feng heard that something was wrong with her and turned to look at her. Ru'er, what's wrong? Shi-Ru-Er didn't say anything. She just slowly raised her hand with a shocked expression and pointed to somewhere in front of her. Elder Hua-Feng and the others looked over and were immediately shocked. A piece of jade-white skeleton was slowly emerging from the ground. The hard ground quickly cracked, and the cracks of various sizes were like a layer of spider webs. The skeleton arched from below and gradually formed a small hill. Shattered rocks rolled in all directions. The red sand poured down, making rustling sounds. This is... Elder Hua-Feng opened his mouth. In an instant, countless guesses flashed through his mind. It turned out that this wasn't a broken skeleton. It seemed to be a whole piece. Gradually, the skeleton revealed its original shape. It was a long white bone, completely white and emitting a faint glow. Upon closer inspection, there seemed to be a transparent liquid flowing slowly inside. A wave of pressure gradually spread from above. This isn't a human skeleton. Someone suddenly cried out in alarm. Then the surroundings fell into a dead silence. At this time, of course, they had all realized this. However, if it wasn't a human skeleton, then could it be, there's more behind? The white-browed old man standing beside Shi-Ru-Er said in a deep voice. Shi-Ru-Er and the others looked back and saw that not far behind them, there was indeed a skeleton emerging from the ground bit by bit. Its shape and size were exactly the same as the previous one. The ground was still shaking. More and more bones appeared in the canyon. 1, 2. An elder looked into the distance and gradually lowered his voice. This was because the number of skeletons that appeared in the canyon had far exceeded their expectations. The positions of these bones were very exquisite because the distance between them was basically the same. And their appearance was almost exactly the same. What the hell is this? Elder Hua-Feng looked from afar and almost couldn't believe his eyes. Who in the world would deliberately bury so many bones in the ground, and in such a pattern? Suddenly a thought flashed in his mind. Wait, if this wasn't a human skeleton, then there was a high chance that it was a magical beast. There weren't many magical beasts that had such a huge skeleton. In addition, they had heard a dragon's roar here before. Roar. At this moment, a shocking dragon's roar sounded. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound and were shocked on the spot. In the distance, a huge white bone dragon's head suddenly rose. The pressure was overwhelming. Digression. I don't know if I can continue writing today, but I'm fighting for it. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1360. There was actually a dragon skeleton buried in the canyon. Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them. As the ground continued to shake violently, more and more skeletons were revealed. A vast and mighty pressure came crashing down. Elder Hua-Feng quickly shouted, "Go up quickly!" Only then did everyone come back to their senses and began to run forward quickly. They flew up one after another and jumped out of the canyon. Although it was a world of ice and snow outside, it was very dangerous. But now this canyon had clearly become a dangerous place. Elder Hua-Feng was the last to go up. The moment his feet landed on the snowy ground, he quickly looked back and immediately sucked in a cold breath. Deep in the scarlet-red canyon, a massive dragon skeleton slowly rose from the ground. The ground cracked and the rocks collapsed. There's actually a dragon skeleton buried here? Shi-Ru-Er was shocked and muttered in a low voice. But the dragon race values the bones of their own clansmen very much and never allows them to wander outside. How could it appear here? Moreover, it was such a complete skeleton. Someone cried out in surprise. Everyone looked back and saw a huge white bone dragon tail suddenly appear in the distance. A second dragon skeleton had appeared. At the same time, a deep dragon's roar reverberated throughout the world. Then a third one appeared. The snowy plains shook and the dragon roared. The dragon's might was awe-inspiring. In the entire northern region of the wilderness, the people who were running in the vast snowy plains were all shocked when they heard this commotion. Countless men and horses began to rush over at high speed. Somewhere in the snowy plains, a man was running forward quickly. Hearing this movement, he was shocked and immediately turned his head to look. When he saw the white dragon bones that appeared one after another, he couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. Immediately, he quickly walked a distance and arrived at an open space. A staircase leading down appeared on the ground. His figure moved and quickly disappeared from the ground. Following the stairs all the way down, he quickly arrived at the empty hall below. Master. He nervously knelt on one knee. The surface of the huge copper mirror was soon filled with the color of blood. A hoarse and low voice sounded. Did you bring Wuxia back? The man kneeling on the ground lowered his head. Replying to Master, Wuxia has already been brought back, but her body is already crippled. She is now being held in the dungeon, awaiting Master's judgment. But what? But the tomb is in chaos. Now, several dragon skeletons had awakened one after another. It won't be long before the surroundings fell into a dead silence. The voice in the bronze mirror fell silent. However, the man kneeling on the ground became more and more terrified. Chills ran down his back and he almost didn't dare to breathe. Chapter 1361. Everyone fell silent for a moment. They had been through so many things recently that they had almost forgotten their original purpose for coming here. The heavenly square cauldron. They didn't realize it at first, but after Xianxia's reminder, they instantly came back to their senses. With so many dragon bones surrounding this place, didn't it mean that there was a problem? Apart from the heavenly square cauldron, which was one of the 10 great sacred tools, what else could have such a standard? Elder Huafeng's spirit rose. What you said makes sense. Moreover, with such a commotion, the entire northern region of the wilderness should know. Maybe Bo Yen and the others will also come. It was fine if they didn't know before, but now that they had guessed this possibility, they naturally had to go back. Let's go. Elder Huafeng took the lead and turned around, walking along the edge of the canyon. The others quickly followed behind him. It was different from the previous nervous and uneasy mood. This time, everyone's hearts were filled with excitement and anticipation. The heavenly square cauldron might really appear there. I really didn't expect that things would take such a turn. The few youths of the meteor sect gathered together and whispered something. If the heavenly square cauldron really appears there, then wouldn't Chuyu hit the jackpot? That's right. There were so many people here, but only Chuyu went in. At that time I thought that he was unlucky, but now, maybe it's a great opportunity. What kind of treasure is the heavenly square cauldron? Countless experts are vying for it. If it really ends up in his hands, then he really hit the jackpot. Alas, if only I was the one who went in. Jianghu walked forward at the side and heard most of these words. She couldn't help but frown. No one knows what's behind that door. What if we don't meet the so-called opportunity and pay with our lives? Wouldn't everything be in vain? For a moment, Jianghu couldn't help but blurt out these words. Those people all looked at her with subtle expressions on their faces. One of them said, Jianghu, why do I feel that you seem to be hoping that something happens to Chuyu? Isn't he also a student of the High Heaven Academy? Speaking of which, he seems to be your junior brother? Jianghu's heart skipped a beat, but she quickly smiled. How could that be? I'm just worried about him. It was better to be safe than sorry. Elder Huafeng and the others also think highly of Chuyu, and I also admire him very much. Then she frowned and a trace of worry appeared on her face. Now, I just hope that everything goes well for him. No matter what happens to the heavenly square sacred cauldron, as long as he can come out safely, it's fine. If it was in the past, she would have looked so pitiful that no one would have the heart to scold her. Unfortunately, her face and body were covered in messy bloodstains and dust. Her entire person looked battered and exhausted. How could anyone feel the slightest bit of pity for her? What's more, Elder Huafeng and Xianxia's attitude towards her had always been very clear. They weren't stupid. Thus, they looked at each other and smiled meaningfully. How would we know what you're thinking? The mockery and ridicule in his eyes were undisguised. Jianghu's expression suddenly became somewhat unsightly. She originally wanted to argue, but in the end she swallowed her words. She clenched her teeth and suppressed the anger and resentment in her heart with great difficulty. These people were merely lackeys of the meteor sect. What qualifications did they have to throw a tantrum at her? She lowered her eyes and concealed her emotions. However, her heart was already in turmoil. If Rongxiu had chosen her as the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower, how would these people dare to look down on her? Although the Jiang family of the Immortal Water Tomb was the head of the 28 divisions, it was still limited to the Yuntian Tower. If it were outside, the first-rate families and clans of the Divine Ruins world wouldn't even put them in their eyes. Even she was looked down upon. In such a situation she still had to be humiliated. In the end, it was all that Xuanhuan's fault. If she had the chance in the future, she would definitely investigate that slut's background. She would return all the torture she had suffered during this period of time tenfold, 100-fold. The group continued to move forward for a distance. The sound of dragon roars echoed around them. The closer they got, the more shaken they felt. When they were about to return to their previous position, there were already 7 sets of dragon skeletons. Fortunately, although these dragon skeletons were powerful, they didn't attack anyone. However, everyone knew that this was just the calm before the storm. Elder Huafeng looked forward and suddenly narrowed his eyes. Someone is coming? Everyone was stunned and hurriedly looked over. Indeed, they saw a group of people walking over from the snowy plains. They look familiar, Shirur muttered. The white-browed old man standing at the side looked over and reminded them. Second young miss, those people seem to be from the Golden Wing sect. Elder Huafeng's heart tightened. Previously, because of the Scarlet Heaven Sword and Jean Lei's death, they had a very unpleasant relationship with the Golden Wing sect. He didn't expect to meet them so soon. The people from the Golden Wing sect also saw Elder Huafeng and the others. The man in the lead paused for a moment before continuing to walk over. In the end, he stopped 300 feet away from Elder Huafeng and the others. There was silence. The two sides confronted each other, and there was a subtle flow of air. Elder Huafeng, long time no see. How have you been? The leader was a middle-aged man, but he was not the sect master of the Golden Wing sect. He was his younger brother, Jean D. As he spoke, he looked at Shirur next to him. The Meteor sect is also here. Second young miss, you are so bold. Elder Huafeng also cupped his hands and said lightly. Yes, it's been a long time. It seems that we are quite fated with the Golden Wing sect. Why didn't your sect master come this time? If he could bring back the Heavenly Square Cauldron, it would be enough to be the most precious treasure of the sect. He didn't believe that the Golden Wing sect was not interested in it. Jean D laughed. My elder brother is in seclusion. Naturally we will come. Why, Elder Huafeng seems to be. Don't misunderstand. This old man is just asking casually. Elder Huafeng smiled. After all, the northern region of the primitive desolate land is vast. It is indeed a coincidence that we can meet. Jean D raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly. There is such a big commotion here. Everyone should be here, right? As he spoke, he turned his eyes and looked at the place in the middle of the dragon bones. This place? Maybe the top treasure of the northern region of the primitive desolate land is hidden here. Elder Huafeng put his hands behind his back and didn't say anything. At this moment, there was another commotion in the distance. An elder glanced over there and then shouted in surprise, Senior brother, you're the leader of the group. Danqing and the others are here. When Jianghu heard this, her heart seemed to be clenched tightly. She looked in that direction. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1362. Not far away, a few figures were rapidly approaching. The person in front was Elder Danqing, who had not been seen for a long time. Behind him were the other elders of the academy. Elder Huafeng quickly went up to greet them. Danqing. He flew over and quickly arrived in front of them. Before he could finish his words, he saw the messy bloodstains on their bodies. One of them even had a broken arm as if it had been cut off by something. Elder Huafeng's heart skipped a beat. What happened to you guys? The primordial desolate north was dangerous, but these were all top-notch figures. How could they be in such a state? Elder Danqing's face was pale. We'll talk about it later. Bring him over to recuperate and rest first. Elder Huafeng nodded with a solemn expression. Then he led the others back. The others also hurriedly went forward and helped. The elder with the broken arm finally couldn't hold on any longer and fainted. The others weren't any better either. Anyone could guess that they must have suffered a terrifying attack. Elder Huafeng waited for their injuries to be treated before he finally opened his mouth to speak. Danqing, are there only a few of you? Where are Bo Yen and the others? Elder Danqing took a deep breath and ate 2 pills in a row before his complexion improved slightly. It's a long story. We were originally together, but we separated later. Why are you guys here? Bo Yen sent a message saying that the Heavenly Square Cauldron has appeared and asked us to come. As Elder Huafeng spoke, he saw the sudden change in Elder Danqing's expression and immediately understood something. These are all fake, aren't they? Elder Danqing smiled bitterly. After we came here, we've been in endless trouble and have been exhausted. When have we ever seen the Heavenly Square Cauldron? Elder Huafeng's heart sank. Although he had already guessed this before, after confirming it, he still felt a strong sense of unease. Bo Yen was separated from us early in the morning. Why would he send you such a message? Elder Danqing also realized that something was wrong and asked in bewilderment. I'm afraid that we've been deceived since then. Elder Huafeng shook his head. He lost his cyan jade token. Perhaps from then on, everything had gone off track. It was clear that someone had purposely spread the news to lure them here. But, who was the mastermind behind this and what was he after? The people who had come this time, including him, were only a few elders. They really couldn't be considered important figures in High Heaven Academy. Who would spend so much effort to do this? We've been here for a few days and have been looking for you. Unfortunately, there was no progress. You're the first batch of people we've seen since we came here. As Elder Huafeng spoke, he suddenly thought of something. Oh no. Before all of you there was also you, Jianghu. At this point he turned around and waved at Jianghu. Xuan, why aren't you coming over to greet your master? When Jianghu heard this, her whole body stiffened and cold sweat broke out on her back. Elder Danqing's expression became somewhat subtle. Xuan Shi is with you? He hadn't noticed it before, but when he heard Elder Huafeng's words, he realized that there was indeed a very familiar figure standing behind the crowd. He had taught his favorite disciple for a few years, so he naturally wouldn't mistake her. Elder Huafeng didn't notice that his tone was wrong. He nodded and explained. Yes. Not long after we arrived, we happened to meet her. After that, she has been following us. Seeing that Jianghu still hadn't moved, he raised his voice again. Xuan? There was really no way to avoid it. Everyone was looking at them. Jianghu clenched her fists so tightly that her nails almost cut through her palms. She stiffly turned around and walked in front of Elder Huafeng and the others. Her head was lowered, and there was almost no expression on her face. Her voice was so low that it seemed like it would dissipate in the wind at any moment. Master. Elder Danqing looked at her. Silence. Elder Huafeng's gaze swept back and forth between the two of them. Only then did he realize that Elder Danqing's reaction was very wrong. He thought for a moment and said, Danqing, I'm really sorry that I didn't take good care of your disciple. But when we saw her, she was already injured. I know. Elder Danqing suddenly interrupted him and smiled meaningfully. Xuan, you're still alive. It really surprises me. The atmosphere became inexplicably awkward. How could a master ask such a question? Jianghu held her breath. I was also lucky to meet Elder Huafeng and the others in the end. Otherwise, I would have died long ago. You've always been smart, so how could anything happen to you? Even if you're in a desperate situation, you'll always be able to turn the situation around, right? Elder Danqing said indifferently. This time, everyone realized that there was a problem. Elder Huafeng raised his eyebrows. Interesting. In the past, Danqing treasured this disciple very much. Even if she occasionally did something unkind, he would always turn a blind eye and be extremely protective of her. He didn't know what was going on this time, but his words were so strange. Could it be that something had happened before? Master? After a long silence, Jianghu raised her head. Her eyes were already filled with tears. Plop. Jianghu knelt on the ground. Master, this disciple was wrong. Please punish me. This sudden scene shocked everyone. What was going on? Jianghu actually knelt down and admitted her mistake? Elder Danqing looked down at her with no expression on his face. Only under his old eyes was a deep sense of sarcasm and ridicule. He was laughing at himself. Why didn't he see that Jianghu was such a person before? All his efforts over the past few years were just a joke. You, get up. Elder Danqing finally spoke. Jianghu looked at him uneasily with some hope in her eyes. Actually, that matter couldn't be completely blamed on her. In that situation, everyone only cared about themselves. How could they think of anything else? Master had always been very good to her. This time, perhaps. Master, you've forgiven me? Elder Danqing's expression didn't change. Just get up. In this world of ice and snow, you're still injured. How can your body withstand it? Jianghu was delighted. In that case, Master really didn't intend to pursue the matter? After following her for so many years, Master definitely couldn't bear to part with her. She stood up and took 2 more steps forward. Master, Elder Danqing suddenly said, from today onwards you will walk your own path and I will walk my own path. From now on you and I are no longer master and disciple. Digression. She was still on the train and her entire body hurt from sitting. There was still a long time before she got home. She should be done for the night. She would go back and rest tonight and resume updating tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. We did reach the door, but unfortunately, we suffered heavy casualties and couldn't make the door open even a crack. It seems that Lingxiao College is indeed extraordinary. Now that everyone is outside, only the people from Lingxiao College are inside. If there really is any opportunity, I'm afraid it will all be given to that person. It's really enviable. The people from all sides spoke one after another, and their tone was not polite. Elder Huafeng's face turned cold. Ever since Chu Yu was swept into the door, they had been on tenterhooks, afraid that something would happen to him. Why did it become Chu Yu who took the lead in these people's words? He originally wanted to flare up, but when he looked around, excluding the meteor sect and Lingyun Mountain, there were already 7 sects gathered around. If they joined forces, Elder Huafeng took a deep breath and tried his best to keep his tone calm. Everyone. It was purely an accident that Chu Yu was trapped inside. We don't know what's going on inside now. Please. Since Elder Huafeng doesn't know, then we have to think of a way to go in as soon as possible, right? Jean D interrupted him and said lazily. He looked at the people around him. There are a total of 9 doors here, but if we break through them one by one, I'm afraid it will be a little difficult. In my opinion, why don't we choose one of them and work together to open it? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1364. Jean D's proposal was agreed upon by everyone. Although they were all competitors and didn't like each other, now that someone from Lingxiao College had entered and broken the balance, they had no choice but to join forces. The Heavenly Square Cauldron was very likely to be inside. What if it was taken away just like that? This was the reason why they had come all the way here. Elder Huafeng clenched his fists tightly, his face solemn. But he also knew that he couldn't stop this matter. He didn't know where Bo Yen and the others were now, only their group was here and they weren't a match for those people on the other side. If Chu Yu really came out safely and obtained some kind of opportunity, these people wouldn't let him leave so easily. Elder Huafeng, don't you want to bring that Chu Yu out too? Why don't we do it together? Jean D teased. Others might not know the name Chu Yu, but he knew it like thunder. There weren't many people who could survive after making the Golden Wing sect suffer a loss. Elder Huafeng hesitated for a moment before nodding. Why not? I just don't know which door you want to break through from. Jean D smiled and said, how about the door that Chu Yu entered before? That's the only door that has been opened so far. Elder Huafeng said indifferently, you may not know this, but that door has been sealed by a boulder and there's no way to enter. Ah, you don't have to worry about this. The commotion just now, the other doors, should be the same, right? Jean D said as he looked around at the crowd. Everyone, am I right? No one refuted. Since all the doors have been sealed, then, although he didn't finish his words, how could everyone not understand what he meant? Elder Huafeng narrowed his eyes. Please? Chu Luiyue seemed to have entered a subtle state. Her body was constantly devouring the energy of heaven and earth around her. She could also clearly feel the invisible barrier. It was as if she could break it with a stretch of her hand and officially step into the 9th stage. But somehow she felt that she was still a little short. She didn't know how much time had passed and she couldn't even remember how much energy she had absorbed. Inside his dantian, the water droplet quietly rotated. The 8 lines were bright and dazzling. Only the 9th line had yet to appear. Chu Luiyue knew that every time he tried to break through, he had to expend more energy than others. Therefore she was already prepared. But he didn't expect that there was still such a huge gap between a rank 8 warrior and a rank 9 warrior. Blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth, flowing down her jade-white skin and dripping onto her clothes. Gradually, the blood spread out and transformed into dark red plum blossoms. Her face was very pale, and her thick and long eyelashes cast 2 faint shadows under her eyes. Suddenly, a loud sound came from outside. The ground shook. On the tombstone in front of Chu Luiyue, there seemed to be colorful lights flashing in the countless black cracks. It was as if something was gradually awakening. Rumble. Another loud noise came from the canyon. Rocks flew everywhere and dust rose into the air. However, the road that was originally sealed was finally cleared out after such a torment. Although it was narrow and could only accommodate 2 people walking side by side, it was enough for everyone. Elder Huafeng, since you've been here before, then, please take the lead. Jean D's proposal was once again unanimously agreed. Elder Huafeng sneered in his heart. Aren't you just afraid that there will be danger ahead? You want to get the treasure but you're not willing to take the risk. Serves you right for not getting anything. Elder Huafeng didn't say anything and walked forward. In front of him, the blazing door was still emitting an astonishing amount of heat. The closer he got, the more the force in his body wanted to boil. Elder Huafeng held his breath. Right now, he only hoped that Chuyu was fine inside. An empty space was cleared in front of the door. After Elder Huafeng stood still, he turned around and looked at them. We've tried various methods before, but we can't open this door alone. So, let's work together. Everyone walked over one after another and stood in their respective positions. The leaders of the various families looked at each other and finally agreed. Everyone, let's work together to open the door first. After that, we'll rely on our own abilities. Although everyone had their own ulterior motives, they would still do some superficial work at this time. Swoosh, swoosh. Several streams of force flew out. Everyone worked together, intending to open the door. A strike landed. Boom. The door didn't move at all. Everyone's expressions changed. Suddenly a Tianlei flashed in the sky. A dazzling light instantly illuminated half of the sky. Everyone looked up. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and it was so dark that it was almost as if night had fallen. A storm swept over and the wind howled. Several Tianlei appeared from behind the clouds one after another. From afar it looked like silver snakes were swimming crazily. A natural phenomenon. Is a supreme treasure about to appear? A surprised and excited voice came from the crowd. Such an extraordinary formation. I'm afraid that the legendary heavenly square cauldron is about to appear. But soon someone denied this guess. No. The energy of heaven and earth is gathering. This is clearly. Someone is about to break through. Although the appearance of a natural treasure would cause a phenomenon, it wouldn't gather so much energy of heaven and earth. It could only mean that someone was about to break through. Elder Huafeng's heart skipped a beat. Could it be, boom? A Tianlei fell with a loud bang. It went straight for the center of the 9 dragon skeletons. Digression, I'm finally alive. Update at 7 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1365. Is Chuyu breaking through? This thought flashed through Elder Huafeng's mind, but he quickly rejected it. Chuyu had just broken through to rank 8 some time ago. How could he break through in such a short period of time? Moreover, advancing from the early stage to the middle stage or even the peak stage of rank 8 would not cause such a huge commotion. Then, it should be someone else? There must be other powerful people hidden inside. Elder Huafeng could not help but worry. The situation was tense. What was Chuyu's situation inside? Boom. Just as he was thinking about it, Tianlei in the sky struck down again. The thick snow began to melt, revealing the rocks below. In the eyes of the surrounding people, the huge rock in the middle was almost like a lone island. It was only connected to the 9 dragon skeletons on the outside. Affected by this energy, the people standing at the front subconsciously took a few steps back. Their expressions were not good. What's going on? Everyone can't enter even if they join forces. Are we going to wait here forever? Not to mention, Tianlei continued to fall, almost devouring this place. Such a scene. Could it be that someone is breaking through to the God realm? At this moment, everyone's attention was focused on that side. Elder Danqing was no exception. Because he was injured, he stood at the back, but his eyes were still fixed on the front. Suddenly, a timid and soft voice came from behind. Master. Elder Danqing turned around, and undisguised disgust flashed across his eyes. I've said it before, I'm no longer your master. You should forget about calling me that. Jiang Jiwan's heart turned cold from his gaze. After entering the academy for so many years, her master had never looked at her with such an expression. She bit her lip and was about to kneel down again. Elder Danqing sneered. Don't do those useless things. Even if you die and shatter your knees, this old man will never take back what I said earlier. Jiang Jiwan's movements suddenly froze, and she did not know what to do for a moment. She was born with a noble status and had always been doted on. When had she ever suffered such humiliation? Elder Danqing had severed his relationship with her in front of so many people, almost nailing her to the pillar of shame. How could she accept it? She had to turn the tide. Master, I know. I've disappointed you with what I've done before. I don't want to defend myself, I just want you to give me a chance. Jiang Jiwan's eyes were red. You've seen my current appearance. I'm neither a human nor a ghost. If you don't help me, then how will I conduct myself in the academy and in the divine ruins world in the future? What does that have to do with me? Elder Danqing's expression was cold. Jianghu, the immortal water mausoleum wouldn't want what you did to spread throughout the divine ruins world, right? She had clearly spent a very long time inside. She even felt that several months had passed or even a year. However, because she was focused on breaking through, she didn't notice how much time had passed. She didn't expect that the changes she experienced inside would only last for 3 short days outside. Seeing her expression, Elder Hua Feng immediately understood something. It seemed that the flow of time inside was very different from outside. That was why Chu Yu broke through to become a rank 9 warrior in such a short period of time. But no matter what, it was best that she could come out safely. He opened his mouth and had a bunch of questions to ask, but when the words reached his mouth, he didn't know where to start. In the end, he only waved at Chu Luiyue. "Brat, come back quickly." Did he know that during this period of time, they had been worried to death? Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and moved, about to go over. "Wait." Beside her, a low and powerful shout suddenly stopped Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue turned her gaze. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man with a strong figure. That face was very unfamiliar, but at this moment, there was obvious hostility on his face. He didn't come with good intentions. Chu Luiyue became vigilant. "May I ask who Senior is?" "Jean D of the Golden Wing sect." He was full of energy and there was a hint of provocation. His eyes swept over the Scarlet Heaven sword in Chu Luiyue's hand and sneered with unknown meaning. "It seems that this thing is quite handy for you?" Chu Luiyue clenched the Scarlet Heaven sword, but her expression was calm. It was normal for the people of the Golden Wing sect to be hostile to her. Anyway, the Scarlet Heaven sword was now hers, and they couldn't take it back no matter what. "You brat, your luck is good. Not only did you get a rare treasure, but you even tried to compete for other Chu Yu. For the sake of Lingxiao College's face, I'll give you a chance. Immediately hand over everything you got there. That's not something you can take." Chu Luiyue frowned slightly, but found that the people next to her didn't refute, as if they agreed with these words. But she was inside, but with the help of the majestic power of heaven and earth, she broke through to the rank 9 warrior. How could she pay it back? "Senior Jean D, please forgive this junior for being stupid, but I don't know what you are referring to?" Although Chu Luiyue was puzzled in her heart, she was still very polite on the surface. With so many people present, she didn't want to cause trouble for no reason. Jean D sneered and his tone became impatient. "What, you don't admit it?" Chu Luiyue said calmly. "If you don't make it clear, this junior really doesn't know what you mean." Jean D let out a ha. "You're still pretending to be crazy. What we want is naturally the heavenly square sacred cauldron." Chapter 1367. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Someone interrupted from the side. "That's right. As long as you hand over the heavenly square cauldron, everything else is negotiable." Chu Luiyue glanced at the person who spoke. She didn't know him, but he seemed to be an important figure of a first-class clan. Those who could come here were not ordinary people, so their words naturally carried a lot of weight. Chu Luiyue looked around calmly. Many people didn't speak. But this attitude showed that they were on the same side as Jean D. Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't speak for a long time, Jean D only thought that she had obtained a treasure and was unwilling to give it up, so he continued, "Chu Yu, you are still young and there are some things that you can't touch. Even if you get it by luck, you may not be able to keep it. Keeping it in your hands will only cause trouble and bring trouble. So, it's better to hand it over. As for us, we will owe you a favor. How about it?" Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. "Do you all think that I got the heavenly square cauldron from inside?" No one answered. But everyone's expression clearly said, "Of course." Obviously this was already their consensus. Not to mention that they had caused such a big commotion, they had all worked together to open the door, but they still couldn't open it. But Chu Yu alone had broken it with a single sword. How could this not make people suspicious? Seeing everyone's reaction, Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They were really imaginative. Although the heavenly square cauldron was indeed with her, she didn't get it this time. Besides, they wanted her things just because they said so. Wasn't it too shameless of them to make it sound so dignified? Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly and said lightly, "I'm sorry to disappoint everyone. This time, other than successfully breaking through to the 9th stage, I didn't get anything in there." As soon as her voice fell, the surroundings fell silent for a moment. Many people looked at each other and frowned, obviously not believing it. "Nothing. How is this possible?" Jean D's face became very cold, and a trace of killing intent flashed quickly. "So you're saying that you're not willing to hand it over?" Chu Luiyue smiled. I didn't get anything, so what do I have to offer? Everyone said that I obtained the heavenly square cauldron from there. May I ask, do you have any evidence? She was inside and they were outside. The door was locked the whole time. She did not believe that they had seen anything. Maybe the evidence is on you. As Jean D spoke, she suddenly tapped her toes and quickly rushed towards Chu Liwei. Since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then don't blame us for being rude. Jean D. How dare you? Elder Hua Feng was shocked when he saw this and immediately rushed over. Chu Liu's figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. So fast. The onlookers were all shocked when they saw this. How is this the speed of a 9th-stage warrior? This Chu Yu clearly has a problem. That's right. It was said that he was a rank 8 warrior before, but after a few days he broke through and became a rank 9 warrior. If the heavenly square cauldron is not on him, where is it? What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and go. If you wait any longer, the treasures will be snatched away by the Golden Wing sect. Soon people from all sides moved out. Everyone was in a mess, and their goal was Chu Liwei. At this moment, a loud sound suddenly came from afar. Chu Liwei looked up and a hint of shock flashed across her eyes. Between heaven and earth, there was only darkness. A transparent flame was burning crazily in midair. Within it, a completely transparent square cauldron was quietly suspended in the air. It was the heavenly square cauldron. Digression. Tomorrow at 12 p.m. mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1368. All the colors and light between heaven and earth seemed to be occupied by that huge cauldron. A sacred and majestic aura spread out from it, causing one's heart to palpitate. The heavenly square cauldron. Someone suddenly cried out in alarm. Someone quickly turned around and ran in that direction. Jean D looked at Chu Liwei suspiciously. So the huge commotion earlier really wasn't because of the appearance of the heavenly square cauldron? He sneered. Chu Yu, we're not done with this. After saying that, his figure flashed and he followed the crowd over there. Chu Yu, are you all right? Elder Hua Feng stepped forward and looked at her nervously. Chu Liwei chuckled. Elder, don't worry. I'm fine. Elder Hua Feng then heaved a sigh of relief as he looked at Chu Liwei with admiration. I didn't expect you to have such an opportunity. In just a few days, Chu Yu had broken through from a rank 8 warrior to a rank 9 warrior. If word got out, who knew how many people would be envious? Chu Liwei raised her chin in that direction. Elder, everyone is going to fight for the heavenly square cauldron. You don't plan to go? That thing is a treasure, but our academy didn't come here for it. Moreover, so many people have gone. It's not that easy to get first place. It was inevitable that there would be another fierce battle. He only wanted to find Bo Yin and the others as soon as possible, as well as the hundreds of students in the academy. He was not interested in anything else. Chu Liwei nodded. Then, the appearance of the heavenly square cauldron is a little strange. Let's wait and see. As she spoke, she glanced to the side and found that the group of people from Lingyun Mountain had already followed them. On the other hand, Shiru flew towards her. It's good that junior brother Chu Yu is fine. Hearing the conversation between the two, she seemed to heave a sigh of relief. The white-browed old man urged from behind. Second miss, we have to hurry up. If we delay any longer, the heavenly square cauldron will be snatched away by others. Unlike Lingxiao College, they had come for that treasure this time. Now that it had finally appeared before their eyes, how could they not fight for it? Shiru nodded at Elder Hua Feng and Chu Liwei. Elder Chu, we will head over first. Senior sister. Chu Liwei suddenly opened his mouth and advised. If such a saint artifact were to appear, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. However, that thing had appeared without a sound. It was a little strange. I think, let's not be so anxious. Let's take a closer look first. Shiru was stunned. What you said makes sense. She came from a first-rate aristocratic family, so it wasn't as if she had never seen a saint artifact before. If one wanted to obtain a treasure of this level, it usually depended on one's luck. Even if he was the first to rush over, he might not be able to gain the recognition of this treasure. Needless to say, there were already so many people rushing over. She hesitated for a moment before nodding. Then let's go over and see what's going on. Chu Liu's heart skipped a beat as he gently nodded. It just so happened that she also wanted to see what it was. Second young mistress. The white-browed old man frowned as if he wanted to persuade her again. Shiru shook her head at him. The white-browed old man finally swallowed the rest of his words and looked at Chu Liwei in confusion. He did not know where this young man came from. The second young mistress seemed to have always valued him. Even at such a juncture, she still chose to accept his opinion. He suppressed the doubts in his heart and followed Xianxia and the others forward. Since ancient times, there has only been one heavenly square cauldron. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice sounded in a deep voice. The one in front must be a fake. Chu Luiyuan nodded imperceptibly. But that aura is indeed very similar to the real heavenly square cauldron. If the real thing was not in her hands, she would have been deceived by the scene in front of her. Even she had almost mistaken it, let alone the others. The legendary three-eyed eagle's tone was disdainful. A fake is a fake. It will never become real. As they spoke, Chu Luiyue and the others had arrived and finally stopped about 300 feet away from the heavenly square cauldron. The group of people who had arrived first were even closer and had already surrounded the huge transparent square cauldron. No one knew whether it was because of the shocking pressure or because they were afraid of the other opponents present, but after they arrived, no one took the initiative to make the first move. It was silent. Only their shining eyes, which were filled with excitement and greed, revealed their thoughts completely. Chu Luiyue looked over. A ball of flame was burning in the air, hot and passionate. The huge transparent square cauldron floated quietly in the air. From the outside, it was exactly the same as the one in her body. Even the engravings on it were exactly the same. Except for one thing, the aura was not right. She did not feel it before, but now that she was in front of it, she immediately realized that this thing was indeed very fake. No matter how similar it was on the outside, the inside was different. In the end, it could not be compared. Unfortunately, those who had not seen the real heavenly square cauldron could not tell at all. Chu Luiyue looked around and quickly found a deep hole in the ground under the transparent square cauldron. The thick snow had melted and even the ground had been lifted. The dark edge of the deep hole faintly emitted a burnt smell. It looked as if it had suddenly rushed out from the ground. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and fell into deep thought. This thing was obviously designed by someone in advance. But she did not know what the other party's purpose was. Suddenly, the transparent square cauldron in the air started to spin. Everyone was on guard. Then the transparent flame suddenly burst. Boom. A terrifying heat wave spread in all directions. Chu Luiyue did not directly confront it. Instead, she chose to retreat. However, at this moment, a cry of pain suddenly sounded in her ears. She quickly turned her head and saw that one of Xianxia's shoulders had been hit by a flaming whip. Blood and flesh flew. Swoosh. A black figure appeared in front of her and firmly protected her. It was her contracted magical beast, the legendary three-eyed eagle. However, the appearance of the legendary three-eyed eagle did not allow Xianxia to escape safely. Instead, it attracted a bigger disaster. Because after it appeared, the transparent square cauldron suddenly rushed in the direction of Xianxia. The raging flames burned wildly and instantly transformed into two flaming whips. They surrounded Xianxia from both sides and easily trapped her. Everyone was shocked by this scene. Did this heavenly square cauldron choose Xianxia? But in the next moment, their guesses were shattered. Because the transparent flame around them had already attacked Xianxia mercilessly. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1369. Xianxia was completely dumbfounded. She had indeed come here for the heavenly square cauldron. However, she hadn't expected that she would be targeted by it for no reason. At first, she thought that she had been chosen by the heavenly square cauldron. However, the intense pain soon made her sober up. This thing clearly wanted to take her life. After she came back to her senses, she frantically retreated. She wanted to get rid of it. However, how could it be so easy? In just a few breaths' time, several different degrees of burns had appeared on her body. Second miss. When the people of the meteor sect saw this, they also realized that they were in danger. They quickly rushed forward. They wanted to rescue Xianxia. However, that transparent flame was burning crazily. They couldn't even get close to it. How could they do anything else? Screech. The legendary three-eyed eagle spread its wings and blocked in front of Xianxia. However, that transparent flame condensed into a flaming whip and quickly flung it away. Then it rushed toward Xianxia at an even faster speed. Chu Luiyue tightly knitted her brows. Xianxia hadn't done anything out of line. So, why was she being targeted like this? Chu Luiyue was about to go forward to help when she suddenly heard a strange sound coming from below. She lowered her head and her pupils suddenly shrank. She saw that something was coming out of that messy pit. It was a black tree root. It was as thick as a baby's arm. However, it contained an astonishingly vigorous aura. It drilled out from below and started to spread along the ground. The snow on the ground melted quickly wherever it passed. Some of the snow water was absorbed by it. Some of it seeped into the ground. It started to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then a second and a third root appeared. A tree started to grow out of it. Everything in the surroundings started to change rapidly. That tree was very strange. It only had roots and branches. It was completely black and didn't have a single leaf. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have thought that it was just an object carved out of black jade. However, Chu Liyue suddenly felt a faint familiar aura. She stared at that tree. She felt that she had seen it somewhere before. In a short time, that tree had become as tall as an ordinary tree. However, it did not stop there. Instead, it continued. The branches were growing and the roots were spreading. Wherever it passed, the snow melted, and it was as warm as spring. Everything was too strange. The onlookers couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression and step back one after another. Ah! Xianxia fell to the ground and cried out in pain. Chu Liyue looked over and saw that Xianxia was covered in wounds and blood. She was in a very sorry state. She was surrounded by the transparent flames. No matter how hard she struggled, she was still unable to extinguish the flames. Jianghu, now is not the time for you to interfere. Elder, I'm doing this for everyone's sake. Jianghu hurriedly stepped forward and said quickly, the legendary three-eyed eagles are very arrogant. The legendary three-eyed eagle is proud and almost never signs contracts with humans. The reason why they are targeting senior sister Xianxia is because she forced herself to make a contract with that legendary three-eyed eagle. Have you forgotten how that legendary three-eyed eagle came to be? Xianxia had said before that her father had spent a lot of effort to catch it. Moreover, that legendary three-eyed eagle was still underage at that time. After raising it for a long time, it finally made a contract with Xianxia. This was undoubtedly a great humiliation to the legendary three-eyed eagle clan. Of course, they wouldn't let go of Xianxia. If we go and help now, we won't be able to defeat these legendary three-eyed eagles. We might even anger them and make the situation worse. Elder Huafeng's expression changed. Then what do you want to do? Jianghu took a deep breath and quickly glanced at Xianxia, who was on the verge of dying. In my opinion, the one who tied the bell should untie it. The only thing we can do now is to let senior sister Xianxia break the contract with the legendary three-eyed eagle and try to make peace with it. Once a human and a magical beast form a contract, the contract can't be broken unless the magical beast dies. Your method won't work. Elder Huafeng quickly rejected. Jianghu's eyes flashed slightly. Elder, you clearly know that this will work. As long as senior sister Xianxia is willing to destroy her pearl of essence, won't it work? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1370. Elder Huafeng's expression changed. There were actually many people who knew about this method, but almost no one would use it. This was because the damage to the cultivator was too great. If the pill of essence was destroyed, all the cultivation would be gone overnight. Who could accept this? This is impossible. Elder Huafeng immediately shouted in a low voice, and his eyes were filled with warning as he looked at Jianghu. Jianghu, even if you have resentment towards Xianxia, she is still your senior sister. Moreover, when you were besieged by the nine-tailed black crows, she even helped you. Take care of yourself. It was obvious what Jianghu was thinking. Seeing that her thoughts had been guessed, Jianghu didn't panic and only smiled bitterly. Elder, you have really misunderstood me. Actually, it's not just me. Senior sister Xianxia definitely knows about this method. In this situation, if she doesn't do this, I'm afraid she will. Only death awaited him. It was already like this, what else could she do? She could only blame herself for being too lucky to have contracted with the legendary three-eyed eagle, the heavenly Tao's reincarnation. Why didn't she think that this day would come when she was arrogant and glorious? Jianghu was very happy in her heart. Now Xianxia only had two choices. The first was to fight to the end, and in the end all the people of the meteor sect would be killed by the legendary three-eyed eagle. The second was to destroy her own pill of essence, break the contract with the legendary three-eyed eagle, and become a cripple from then on. No matter which one it was actually a dead end for Xianxia. Looking at Xianxia, who was almost completely surrounded by the legendary three-eyed eagles, Jianghu felt a burst of joy in her heart. Originally, she was still thinking of ways to destroy her prestige, but she didn't expect that she didn't even need to do anything. Let's see how she can put on a high and mighty face in the future. Elder Huafeng frowned, and his heart was incomparably tangled. In fact, they didn't have enough manpower, not to mention that Danqing and the others were injured and couldn't help at all. If they really fell out with these legendary three-eyed eagles, then… Xianxia fell to the ground, his heart filled with unprecedented despair. She had suffered quite a few injuries and was stained with blood. The snow beneath her had already melted and her clothes were soaked in the icy cold water. Her body was surrounded by a transparent flame that was scorching hot. Heat and cold intertwined, almost taking away half of her life. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. She looked back. In front of him was the heavenly square cauldron, behind him was the legendary three-eyed eagle. The people of the meteor sect couldn't get close to her. Even her contracted three-eyed eagle had been restrained by the other two three-eyed eagles. She had nowhere to retreat. A biting cold aura rapidly approached. Xianxia's lips moved slightly as a bitter smile appeared on her face. Looks like I'm really going to fall here this time. However, in the next moment she suddenly felt something and opened her eyes. It was a slender figure that appeared in front of her. Xianxia's heart skipped a beat. Chuyu? You, senior sister, don't be impatient. Chu Luiyue raised his hand and waved his sword. The surrounding transparent flames that were burning crazily were quickly swallowed by the sword. The flames surged up the sword and finally disappeared into Chu Luiyue's palm. However, in the eyes of outsiders, the flames were all taken care of by the sword. They wouldn't suspect Chu Luiyue. His series of actions were as smooth as flowing water. Before the crowd could react, they saw the youth had already swallowed the surrounding flames with his sword. You overestimate yourself. A mocking voice came from the crowd. If you want to be a hero, you should see if you have the ability to do so. You're just a 9th stage warrior and you think you're something? Just wait and see. The heavenly square cauldron and the legendary three-eyed eagle are not to be trifled with. Many people looked at Chu Luiyue with eyes full of ridicule and ridicule. Xianxia suddenly regained her senses and hurriedly said, Chuyu, leave quickly. If he was implicated because of this, she wouldn't be able to get over it no matter what. Before she finished speaking, the heavenly square cauldron had already thrown out another flaming whip. It went straight for Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue raised his eyes slightly and glanced at the heavenly square cauldron that was about to hit him. In the next moment, the flames suddenly stopped an inch in front of Chu Luiyue. The scene seemed to be frozen, and it was filled with an indescribable sense of strangeness. Chu Luiyue raised his hand impatiently, and the vigorous force in his palm quickly transformed into a scarlet flame. Faint specks of gold could be seen within it, but they were covered by the scarlet flame and were almost impossible to distinguish. Swish! The scarlet flame also transformed into a flaming whip and lashed out fiercely. Pah! A crisp sound was heard. The transparent flame instantly dissipated. Even the heavenly square cauldron behind it shook. Everyone was dumbfounded. What's going on? When did Chuyu become so strong? The heavenly square cauldron had chased after Xianxia to such an extent. Why did it suddenly cower now? Chu Luiyue had already turned around and looked at the dozens of three-eyed eagles that were flying over quickly. The leader was staring at her with an ice-cold expression. Both sides were in a stalemate. In a short period of time, many leaves had grown on the purple-gold Bodhi tree. Pieces of purple-gold light flickered, almost dazzling. It grew taller and taller, and the canopy of the tree overturned the sky. Below, where the roots of the tree spread, the snow melted, revealing a fertile brownish-black land full of vitality. The surrounding temperature seemed to be gradually rising. Elder Huafeng's heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something, and he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. An elder behind him couldn't help but ask in a low voice, Huafeng, should we go over and help? Chuyu couldn't do it by himself, right? Although he had broken through to the 9th stage, the three-eyed eagles were all divine beasts. How could he be a match for them? Elder Huafeng swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Wait a moment. It wasn't that he didn't want to help, but he knew Chuyu too well. If he wasn't confident, this kid would definitely not rush forward. The three-eyed eagles were powerful, but Chuyu had a top-notch trump card. Now, it all depended on how he would choose to play. Hearing Elder Huafeng's words, although the others were worried, they could only hold back. Jianghu sneered in her heart. These people thought too highly of Chuyu. Even if he had the help of the red-tailed phoenix, how could he deal with so many three-eyed eagles? He was really crazy about being in the limelight. But this was also good. It would be best if he and Xianxia were completely dealt with. Chu Luiyue took a step forward. Shi opened her mouth. Chu Yu, everyone turned to look at him. The leading three-eyed eagle's eyes were like knives as it scraped past Chu Luiyue's body. Suddenly, Chu Luiyue's figure flashed and actually rushed towards the purple gold Bodhi tree on the other side. Screech. Deep hatred erupted from the eyes of the three-eyed eagle as it headed straight for Chu Luiyue. The other three-eyed eagles also quickly followed. Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1371. Chu Luiyue was extremely fast. In just a few breaths, she had already arrived under the purplish gold Bodhi tree. She looked up. The dazzling leaves swayed with the wind, shining brightly. Invisible and subtle air currents surged in the surroundings, exuding an astonishingly vigorous aura. The purplish gold Bodhi leaf was an extremely rare treasure even in the Divine Ruins world. Now that a purplish gold Bodhi tree had appeared, it was even more precious. If not for the appearance of the heavenly square cauldron and the many legendary three-eyed eagles, everyone would definitely not be as calm as they were now when they saw this tree. Of course, there was another reason why they did not move. Attacking the purplish gold Bodhi tree in front of the legendary three-eyed eagles, wasn't that courting death? Chu Luiyue stood under the tree and looked back. Several legendary three-eyed eagles had already followed over and surrounded her. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel the burning hatred in their eyes. She raised her brows slightly. This hatred came a little too suddenly. Even though she had helped Shi, they should not have such a reaction. Then, was it because of something else? Could it be because of the fake heavenly square cauldron? Just as this thought flashed through her mind, the leading legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly flapped its wings. At the same time, it let out a sharp screech. Bang! A crisp shattering sound was heard. The transparent square cauldron floating in midair not far away had suddenly exploded. Everyone was stunned on the spot. Then they saw the fragments of the transparent square cauldron rapidly disintegrate. Light flickered, and in the end only a transparent flame was left. Whoosh! That ball of flame was flying towards them at lightning speed. In the end, it was directly swallowed by the leading legendary three-eyed eagle. Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed slightly. So that was it. That flame was indeed the karmic fire within the heavenly square cauldron. She did not know what method these legendary three-eyed eagles used to extract this flame and preserve it until now. From the looks of it, they even directly controlled it and turned it into their own power. They used this flame to transform into the heavenly square cauldron and lure everyone over. Their purpose was to find the real person who owned the heavenly square cauldron. They should have realized this when she scattered the flames of the fake heavenly square cauldron. That should be where the hatred that filled his heart came from. Chu Luiyue gently placed his hand on the tree trunk. An aura poured into it. He sure is leisurely. The onlookers were not optimistic about this and could not help but discuss in low voices. The purple gold Bodhi tree is the divine tree of the godly three-eyed eagle clan. How can it be tainted by others? I think Chu Yu has really gone overboard. He thinks that he can do whatever he wants just because he has broken through to stage 9. Little does he know that there are tens of millions of experts in this world, and many of them are existences that he cannot afford to provoke. I heard that Chu Yu contracted a red-tailed red phoenix. That's probably why he's so confident, right? So what? The red-tailed red phoenix and the divine three-eyed eagle had always minded their own business, but if they were to really fight, they would be outnumbered. Chu Yu did not have any advantage. The legendary three-eyed eagle standing at the very front suddenly flew up. It went straight for Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue closed his eyes. The purple gold Bodhi tree was lush with leaves. A gentle breeze blew and the leaves danced with it. The voice beside Chu Luiyue's ears suddenly faded away, and everything became quiet and peaceful. Countless pairs of eyes looked over. Its sharp beak looked like it was about to peck Chu Luiyue's face. Elder Huafeng's hands were tightly clenched into a ball, and his heart almost jumped out of his chest. A trace of despair flashed across Shiruer's eyes. She looked at this scene in a daze, and 2 lines of clear tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. The corners of Jiang Jiwan's mouth slowly curled up into a cold smile. However, at this moment, the purple gold Bodhi tree swayed gently. Crash! The branches and leaves rustled. Resplendent light flickered. The three-eyed eagle suddenly stopped in front of Chu Luiyue. After a short pause, it stared at Chu Luiyue's eyes, which were filled with resentment, shock, and disbelief. In the end, it changed into fanatical joy. It folded its wings and landed in front of Chu Luiyue. It seemed as if it was about to bow its head and salute her. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. A gust of wind blew, and the branches and leaves gradually stopped swaying. The three-eyed eagle's movements paused, and a wisp of understanding streaked across its eyes. Then it took a step back and raised its head to the sky, crying out. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt that the purple gold Bodhi tree next to her shook. She raised her head and looked over. Countless purple gold Bodhi leaves flew out. They flew in the air and connected with each other. It seemed as if they were about to form a huge barrier. Quickly retreat. It was Unknown who cried out in alarm. The crowd, which had been quiet for a long time, finally became restless. All the people retreated one after another. The meteor sex people reacted quickly, and immediately stepped forward to support Shiru and take her away. No. Chuyu is still there. Shiru struggled and wanted to go back. The white-browed old man said in a deep voice. You guys take the second miss away first. I'll think of a way to save Chuyu. With Shiru's current situation, she wouldn't be of any help even if she stayed behind. She might even drag them down. Shiru quickly understood this point, and swallowed her saliva with difficulty. She had no choice but to swallow the rest of her words. Then, she anxiously looked at the youth who was standing quietly under the purple gold Bodhi tree. In the end, Elder Huafeng's figure flashed and he rushed over. However, the speed at which the barrier was condensing was faster than he had expected. Before he could get close to Chu Luiyue, a purple gold barrier had already appeared in front of him. A powerful oppressive aura came crashing down on him. Elder Huafeng didn't even have time to come in contact with the barrier, and his body was already sent flying. Everyone was either actively or passively forced back and scattered in all directions. They looked at the scene in front of them in shock. A dazzling purple gold barrier enveloped everything in its path. It had also isolated everything. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1372. The barrier spread out, isolating the area from the outside world. But the miraculous thing was that sunlight could still seep in, so the surrounding scenery looked no different from before. Oh no, there were some changes. The purplish gold Bodhi tree's influence had basically transformed into something else. At a glance, it was as warm as spring and full of vitality. Chu Luiyue let go of her hand and looked forward. The three-eyed eagle standing at the front couldn't hide the excitement in its eyes. Chu Luiyue chuckled. Zichen, come out and meet your tribesmen. A huge purple gold barrier stood out above the snowfield. Everyone wanted to go in and see what was going on, but most of them were afraid. There were so many three-eyed eagles. They might not be a match for them. Besides, even the purple gold Bodhi tree was here. Who knew if there were other three-eyed eagles? So this is their nest, an elder couldn't help but mutter. No wonder the three-eyed eagles haven't appeared in the past 1,000 years. After all this time, they're all in the wilderness north. Moreover, they're hiding so well. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have dared to believe what had happened. The white-browed elder was swept out. He walked to Shiru with a face full of guilt. Second young mistress, this old man is incompetent. Shiru coughed and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Her face turned paler. No, it's not your fault. It's all my fault. If it wasn't to save her, Chuyu wouldn't have provoked those three-eyed eagles. He wouldn't have been trapped inside. How could he be a match for them alone? The white-browed elder thought for a moment and frowned. Second young mistress, actually, this old man feels that those three-eyed eagles don't seem to have any intention of harming Chuyu. At first, they were indeed full of murderous intent as they went straight for Chuyu. But later on, for some reason, their attitude seemed to have changed. Otherwise, they wouldn't have stopped attacking at the last moment. Shiru naturally saw this as well. However, one could never be too careful. No matter what, Chuyu was trying to help her. If something really happened, then don't worry. Strangely, Elder Huafeng seemed to be relieved. He will be safe. With the crimson gold heavenly phoenix, no matter how many legendary three-eyed eagles came, it shouldn't be a problem, right? At the same time, in a dungeon in the north of the untainted land, the dark and cramped space was filled with a nauseating stench of blood. A thin man leaned against the cold wall. His hands and feet were chained, and his range of movement was limited to 5 steps around him. His originally pretty face was now deeply sunken. His cheekbones were protruding and his face was haggard. There were even a few cracks on his pale lips. With a slight movement, dark red blood seeped out. His eyes were closed and his breathing was weak as if he would pass out at any moment. Mu Qinghe. A hoarse and deep voice came from the front. Mu Qinghe's eyelids moved, and he opened his eyes with great difficulty. When he saw the huge bronze mirror in front of him, a trace of awe and anxiety flashed across his eyes. He immediately got up and knelt down with great difficulty. Master, it seems that you haven't been doing well during this period of time. The voice seemed to be mocking, but it still made him shudder. Xuanhuan, you didn't seem to do anything to you. How did you become like this, Mu Qinghe's head was on the ground. I'm incompetent. I'm afraid I don't have much time left. I can't serve you, the voice laughed. You've been with her for so many years. Don't you have any nostalgia? All right, she's also in the north of the untainted land. Why don't you meet her? Mu Qinghe's heart skipped a beat. Digression, I'm dizzy from hunger. I'm going to look for food. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1373. He knelt on the ground and did not get up for a long time. His voice was weak and dull. She already knows that I betrayed her. There should be no need to see her again, right? What can I say if I see her? No one in this world will continue to believe in someone who once betrayed them. Moreover, the things he had done back then were enough to put her to death. That's not necessarily true. The voice laughed and said ambiguously. It's because she already knows that you betrayed her, but she still chose to spare your life. This is more interesting, isn't it? She brought you up personally. Perhaps she still can't bear to let you go? Mu Qinghe knelt on the ground and fell into silence. His body was stiff and cold. He closed his eyes, concealing all the emotions in his eyes. The surrounding air seemed to freeze inch by inch. There are too many people here this time. It's a mess. When it's quieter, I'll invite her over. If I remember correctly, the two of you haven't seen each other for a long time, right? After all, you're master and servant. It's only right for you to catch up. Don't forget that thing is still with her. Mu Qinghe's pale lips trembled. Finally, he spat out a few words with difficulty. I'll do as you say. A chilling laugh rang out, but it quickly dissipated. After a long time, Mu Qinghe finally straightened up. The huge bronze mirror not far in front of him had already lost all of its blood-red color. Only the edges of the mirror were tinged with a faint dark red. The surroundings were dark, empty, and silent. Mu Qinghe stood up slowly. His face was half bright and half dark. It was hard to see clearly. This unfilial descendant greets the ancestor. Inside the barrier, the many legendary three-eyed eagles gathered together and bowed respectfully to Zichen. They could not hide their excitement. Although Zichen looked calm on the surface, Chu Luiyue and his aura were connected. Naturally, he could clearly feel the ups and downs in his heart. After being trapped for 1,000 years, how could he not be emotional when he finally saw his clansmen? You may dispense with the formalities. Is everything going well in the clan? Zichen calmed down and finally spoke. As his voice fell, the expressions of the legendary three-eyed eagles on the opposite side became a little strange. The leader revealed a helpless expression. Ancestor, to be honest, the situation in the clan is really not good. Zichen's heart sank. Back then, after you suddenly disappeared, there were people who wantonly besieged us. After a bitter battle, more than half of the clansmen died. In the end, in order to preserve their bloodline, everyone left their original place. After many twists and turns, they arrived at this place. There has been no news of you all these years. We all thought that someone had used the heavenly square sacred cauldron. The leader of the three godly eagles glanced at Chu Luiyue as he spoke. Zichen looked indifferent. Just go on. Yes. When you disappeared all those years ago, you left behind a clump of heavenly square cauldron's karmic fire. We've been using this as a clue to search for you, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to find anything even after so many years. It wasn't until this time that we realized that the thing was actually... There was a brief silence. Several legendary three-eyed eagles couldn't help but look at Chu Luiyue again. If they hadn't sensed wrongly, the heavenly square cauldron seemed to be on this person. So this time, you've deliberately set up a trap to lure the person who really has the heavenly square cauldron and find a way to capture her? Chu Luiyue asked with a faint smile. That's right. These legendary three-eyed eagles were honest and admitted it directly. That's why we sensed that the thing was on you, so... The leader of the three godly eagles glanced at Zichen uneasily as he spoke. They could all see that the relationship between their ancestor and this young man was not ordinary. Back then, it was rumored that Taizu was killed by someone using the heavenly square cauldron, so they had always been very hostile to the person who had the heavenly square cauldron. But now, it seemed that something was wrong. The heavenly square cauldron has indeed recognized her as its master, but what happened back then had nothing to do with her. Zichen knew that they had misunderstood, so he explained directly. To be precise, if it wasn't for her, I might have been completely annihilated by now. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Luiyue immediately felt many eager gazes fall on her. I see. Young Master Chu, sorry for the disrespect. Their attitude changed drastically. Saving Zichen was a great favor to their entire tribe, so they naturally had to express their gratitude. Chu Luiyue coughed. You're welcome. In fact, she didn't lose anything. After all, Zichen had become her contracted divine beast. It's a long story. I'll explain it to you in detail when I have time. As Zichen spoke, he looked at the leader of the 3 godly eagles. Did you decide to do this on your own, or do you have other plans? Did you spread the news that the heavenly square cauldron has appeared here? Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed. This was one of the truths that she wanted to know the most. The leader of the 3 godly eagles shook his head. Actually, someone came to us and said that he would help us find the person who had the heavenly square cauldron, so we agreed. What happened after that was basically done by the other party, and we just waited here quietly. Zichen and Chu Luiyue looked at each other. Who is that person? We don't know him either. When he appeared, he didn't show his true appearance, and even his figure and appearance were different. But he shouldn't be an ordinary person. This was natural. Being able to find the 3 godly eagles and persuade them to work together was enough to explain a lot of things. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment. Zichen, who knows about the dispute between the 3 godly eagles and the heavenly square cauldron? Zichen narrowed his eyes and shook his head. I thought that only our tribe knew, but it seems that's not the case. Could it be the people who harmed you back then? Or those who besieged the 3 godly eagles after you died? Zichen was stunned, and a hint of complicated emotions flashed across his eyes. It's not impossible. It's just that thousands of years have passed, and now I don't know where they are or how they appear in the world. Anything could happen in such a long period of time. Chu Luiyue crossed her arms and gently rubbed her chin with a faint smile. The other party seems to be coming for me. Using the heavenly square cauldron as bait, of course he was fishing for her. But now she wasn't sure if the other party knew that the heavenly square cauldron was with her. After pondering for a moment, she looked up and asked, Can you still contact those people now? The 3 godly eagles shook their heads. They are very cautious and they always take the initiative to contact us. And they will quickly destroy all clues and evidence afterward. We also tried to track them, but it was all in vain. The other party is very cunning. However, one thing is certain, the other party is also in the northern region of the Great Desolate Land. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 1374. Chu Luiyue frowned. The weather in the northern part of the Eldritch Wilderness is harsh and the environment is extreme. Almost no one can stay here for a long time. Besides, in the vast snowfield, even if there are people. Suddenly her voice paused. Of course it was conspicuous in the snowfield, but what if it was underground? The area here was vast and boundless. Who knew what was hidden underground? She still hadn't forgotten about the valley and the tombstone that was hidden underground. Thinking of this, she was curious and could not help but ask, By the way, do you know who died here and set up a tomb and tombstone? The expression of the leading 3-eyed eagle changed slightly. 1,000 years ago there was indeed a great battle here. If you are talking about the person who guarded the tomb with 9 dragon skeletons, it should be right. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. 9? Guarding? Yes. Back then, that expert fought fiercely with the dragon clan here and finally died. However, when he died, he also dragged 9 dragons to the grave with him. After death, he still used his remaining strength to suppress them here, so that they could not break free. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. The dragon clan has rarely interacted with the human clan. What did that person do to be besieged like this? We don't know about this, but I heard that it has something to do with the corpse of a great phoenix dragon. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to have been hit by something. She suddenly looked up with a shocked expression. What? The 3-eyed eagle thought that she had such a reaction because she heard the great phoenix dragon. After all, it was one of the 2 ancient divine beasts. It was normal for her to be so shocked. It explained patiently, We don't know the details, so we can only guess. Back then, that expert accidentally obtained the corpse of a great phoenix dragon in the northern part of the Eldritch Wilderness. Before he could do anything, he was discovered by the dragon clan and attacked together. That was why the great battle broke out. Unfortunately, the dragon clan underestimated that expert's strength. Even with the combined strength of the 9 dragons, they were still no match for him. In the end, both sides died. Of course, from the looks of the current situation, that expert is still a level higher. Even if I were to die, I would have to trap these dragon race beings here. Countless thoughts flashed through Chu Liyue's mind. The corpse of the great phoenix dragon. She had seen it before. Furthermore, 2 of the wing bones were in Zichen's body. Wasn't it buried in the Tianling god realm in Taizu? How could this be? Was it a coincidence or? Chu Liyue lowered his eyes, but his heart was pounding. The ancient divine beast, the great phoenix dragon, was already a rare sight. The possibility of 2 corpses appearing was really not high. Furthermore, Taizu had indeed said that he had been here before. Could it be? Absurd and bold ideas kept flashing in Chu Liyue's mind. She took a deep breath and asked calmly, since everyone knows that these dragon bones are trapped here, then, why hasn't the dragon race done anything? Rumor has it that they wouldn't allow the bones of their clansmen to be left outside, right? That's true, but it depends on the situation. These 9 dragon bones have been trapped here for thousands of years. It's not like the dragon race hasn't come here and tried to take them away, but they all failed. In the end, they simply stopped coming. However, from this, it could be seen that the expert back then was indeed very powerful. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so powerful after death. Chu Liyue's mind was in a mess. She began to call out to Taizu in her heart. However, Taizu seemed to be still in a deep sleep and didn't give her any response. Zichen noticed that Chu Liyue's expression was a little strange. He thought of the wing bones in his body and guessed something. Do you want to go back and take a look? Chu Liyue pondered for a moment. Okay. Time passed slowly. The sky gradually darkened. Between heaven and earth, only the faint purple-gold barrier was exceptionally eye-catching. It's been so long, why is there still no movement at all? I wonder how Chuyu is now. They're inside and we're outside. Even if something really happens, we won't be able to see it. Let's just wait. I heard that Chuyu has contracted a red-tailed phoenix. Maybe he can really turn the situation around. I feel that after he was locked in that door, he broke through to the 9th stage in just a few days. It's even more shocking. Such an opportunity is something that others can't even ask for. Fortunately, the heavenly square sacred cauldron didn't fall into his hands. However, that item seems to belong to the three-eyed eagle now. The news that was spread before didn't mention this. I'm afraid we have to investigate this matter carefully. Everyone was discussing animatedly, and many people began to suspect the heavenly square sacred cauldron. Those present were all important existences in the divine ruins world, so they naturally weren't brainless. Now that things had already happened, it wasn't difficult to detect the problem with just a little thought. Now they all planned to wait for Chuyu to come out before making a decision. On the other hand, Lingxiao College was silent. Chuyu and the others were naturally the most worried about them. Jianghu stood in an inconspicuous corner behind the crowd, treating her wounds alone. Ignoring the other injuries for the time being, the most serious one was the burn on her arm. Although she had already applied medicine before, it had been such a long time that she should have changed the dressing long ago. However, they had been running back and forth, so they didn't have the time or energy to do this. She slowly removed the gauze and the wound had already festered. With a gentle tug, it implicated a piece of flesh. Her face was pale from the pain, but she could only grit her teeth and continue. Sherur, who was at the side, inadvertently saw this scene, and a trace of ridicule flashed across her eyes. Because Elder Danqing had publicly severed his master-disciple relationship with Jianghu, the people of Lingxiao College's attitude towards Jianghu was much worse than before. This wasn't because everyone was flattering the strong and stepping on the weak, but Elder Danqing had always loved this disciple of his. Now that he had suddenly become like this, it was obvious that Jianghu had done something wrong. He left Jianghu with the last bit of dignity and didn't expose her in public. However, everyone wasn't stupid, and their attitude towards Jianghu naturally wasn't any better. So now no one was even helping her treat her wounds. Moreover, she had already lost most of her things before, and now she didn't even have any useful medicine. She could only reluctantly ask for some medicine from the other elders and apply it on her own. Could be said that she was miserable. You reap what you sow. The white-browed elder followed Sherur's gaze and sneered. His voice wasn't loud or soft, but it was enough for Jianghu to hear clearly. Jianghu was distracted for a moment and didn't control the strength in her hands well. She directly tore off a large piece of flesh that was stuck to her wound, and it was so painful that her face turned pale. However, no one cared, as if she wasn't here at all. Jianghu bit her lip. She couldn't go on like this. If something really happened, she would definitely be abandoned by everyone immediately. Suddenly, her eyes lit up and she looked back. Chuyu had already come out just now, so that door should still be open, right? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1375. At that time, everyone's attention was taken away by the sudden appearance of the heavenly square cauldron, but almost no one remembered that the place Chuyu had gone to was also a good place. Otherwise, how could he have broken through from a rank 8 warrior to a rank 9 warrior in just a few days? The heavenly square cauldron was indeed a treasure, but in the end only one person could obtain it. Not to mention, there was still the troublesome three-eyed eagle clan. Rather than waiting here for an illusory opportunity, it was better to find another way. Perhaps, she could also obtain some kind of opportunity from this? Thinking of this, Jianghu had made up her mind. Anyway, these people no longer cared about her and were even full of disgust, so what else did she have to worry about? As long as Elder Danqing was still here, she could not stand out. She might as well cut off all means of retreat. As she carefully and slowly bandaged her wounds, she looked around quietly. The sky had already darkened, and the surrounding scenery was gradually blurred. Everyone was staring at the barrier and didn't notice what was happening here. She cautiously moved backward, and her figure quickly and silently disappeared into the crowd. Jianghu thought that she had done it flawlessly, but she did not know that all her actions had been seen from the beginning. She's still as restless as ever? Xianxia retracted her gaze and looked lazy. Second young mistress indeed has foresight. The white-browed old man asked in a low voice. Why don't I? She doesn't need us to worry about her anymore, and there's no need to trouble you. Xianxia smiled. Although her lips were pale, her aura had recovered a lot. I don't need to think to know where she went. I'd like to see what kind of waves she can stir up. Yes. The night was dark. Jianghu relied on her previous memories and barely managed to return to the canyon. At this moment, the 9 dragon skeletons were quiet for some reason and just stood there. It was a little creepy in the night. Jianghu stuck her head out and looked down. She could barely see the outline of some gravel here, and the door was still open. However, it was dark inside and nothing could be seen. I guess I still have to go down? Jianghu took a deep breath and jumped down. As soon as she landed, Jianghu sensed that something was wrong. It was unknown when the heat in the canyon had dissipated. At this moment, she was standing not far from the door, but the heat from before had completely faded away. Even felt a little cold. She cautiously looked inside. Unfortunately, standing here, he still couldn't see anything. The cut on the door was sharp and neat. It was enough to show the strength of the person who wielded the sword and the sharpness of the sword. Jianghu could not suppress the jealousy in her heart. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1376. That was the legendary three-eyed eagle clan. Since when did they become so easy to talk to? For the sake of the red-tailed phoenix, they didn't touch Chuyu, but they actually agreed to release Xianxia's contracted beast. Wasn't this too unbelievable? Even Xianxia was shocked. She didn't care about her injured leg and limped over. The white-browed elder hurriedly supported her from the side, afraid that she would accidentally fall. Chuyu, is what you said true? Xianxia's heart was beating violently, and her eyes were full of expectation. Chuyu raised his eyebrows and snapped his fingers. Whoosh! A legendary three-eyed eagle quickly flew over. Xianxia's face suddenly burst with joy. This was the one she contracted. The legendary three-eyed eagle hovered above Xianxia's head for a moment and looked at her apologetically. In fact, after the contract, Xianxia had been very good to it. It would be a lie to say that it didn't have any feelings for it. It was just that it was in a dilemma when its clansmen came. On the one hand, it didn't want Xianxia to get hurt. On the other hand, it didn't want to violate the rules of its clansmen, which led to this outcome. Fortunately, it was all over now. Xianxia couldn't believe it and couldn't help but ask, Your clansmen won't pursue the matter of the contract between you and me? The legendary three-eyed eagle nodded and quickly looked at Chuyu. Of course, the others didn't have any objections since the ancestor had spoken. Not to mention, the ancestor had already contracted with a human. It quickly returned to Xianxia's body. Xianxia was overjoyed and looked at Chuyu with gratitude. Chuyu, I really don't know how to thank you. Although Chuyu didn't say much, she knew that he must have helped a lot. Although she didn't know how he persuaded the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle clan, but it was really too good. This legendary Three-Eyed Eagle was given to her by her father, and she had always treasured it. She originally thought that she was at the end of her rope, but who knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel? Senior sister, you're welcome. It was willing to follow you anyway. Chu Luiyue smiled. The legendary Three-Eyed Eagle is arrogant, but it's also loyal and righteous. As long as you treat it well, you won't have to worry about other problems in the future. Did this mean that he had already convinced the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle clan? Shiruya was shocked. With so many people present, all of them were reputable figures in the Divine Ruins world. Even if they went legendary Three-Eyed Eagle, they wouldn't. After all, the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle clan's Eagle Re-Eyed Eagle clanish Chu-Chu's legendary Chu-Chu, Su-Suit. What, to her, S is Y. SSS, T. Eschchu Luiyue turned a blind eye to their gazes and turned around. The purple gold Bodhi tree stood there quietly. It didn't continue to grow, but it didn't hide either. The legendary Three-Eyed Eagles that had appeared earlier all returned to the tree the moment she came out. Chu Luiyue persuaded them for a long time before they didn't send her out respectfully. After all, it wasn't good to be seen by others. It was better to keep a low profile. Sensing Chu Luiyue's gaze, they all looked over, their eyes shining. Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. Originally, after knowing that Zichen had formed a contract with her, they felt that it was unfair. But later, when they heard that Zichen was saved by her and that she had helped him reconstruct his body, they were completely submissive to her. If not for the repeated warnings, they would have pounced on her again. She coughed and cupped her fists. Thank you for your understanding, everyone. There's still a long way to go. Screech. The legendary Three-Eyed Eagles responded in unison. There was no longer any provocation or hostility in their cries. Instead, there was a trace of reluctance. The expressions of the onlookers became even more subtle. What did Chuyu say and do to make the legendary Three-Eyed Eagles treat her so politely? Elder Hua Feng revealed a meaningful expression. The crimson gold heavenly phoenix is indeed powerful. Elder, I suddenly remembered that I left some things in the tomb. I'm afraid I have to go back and get them. Elder Hua Feng was stunned. Tomb? What tomb? Chu Luiyue paused and explained. It's the place where I was locked up. The surroundings fell silent. Everyone's attention was immediately drawn over. Hearing Chu Luiyue's words, many people were surprised. Tomb? So that place is actually... All right then. We'll go back and get it together. Elder Hua Feng didn't want Chu Luiyue to go alone anymore, so he wanted to follow her no matter what. Chu Luiyue couldn't refuse and could only agree in the end. She lifted her foot and walked forward. Jean Di and the others looked at each other and frowned. However, before they could speak, Chu Luiyue stopped and looked back. She raised her eyebrows slightly and said with a faint smile. By the way, there's something I forgot to tell everyone. The heavenly square cauldron that appeared before is fake. It's just an object that was transformed by the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle, and it's still with them now. If you don't believe me, just go ahead and snatch it. Please forgive us. We'll accompany you. After saying that, she turned around and left, leaving everyone dumbfounded. Is what she said true or false? The appearance of the heavenly square cauldron was sudden, and there was no phenomenon of heaven and earth. Now that I think about it, there seems to be something wrong with it. I think so too. That thing was controlled by the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle before. This is abnormal in itself, right? Could it be that Chuyu really has nothing to do with the heavenly square cauldron? Chu Luiyue turned a deaf ear to the voices behind her. Anyone with a brain would be able to guess what was going on by now. She only wanted to figure out one thing now. Why does it seem that someone is missing? Chu Luiyue walked a few steps and suddenly found that something was wrong. She looked around and found that someone was indeed missing. Where's Jianghu? The elders were also astonished. She was still here just now. It's only been a while. Where can she go? Shiruya added. Chuyu, if I'm not wrong, she should have gone to the place you went before. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes slightly. Shiruya paused. Actually, I knew when she left, but I didn't stop her. She should be fine, right? Of course not. Chu Luiyue's lips curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. That place is very safe. With that, she continued to walk forward. Shiruya blinked her eyes blankly. Why did she feel that Chuyu's expression just now was a little, as if he was waiting to watch a good show? Suddenly she had a flash of inspiration. Could it be that there's something good hidden in that tomb? As Chu Luiyue walked forward, she kept calling for Taizu in her heart. Right now, she was eager to confirm the guess in her heart. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1377. Jiang Jiwan stepped through the door and entered. The surroundings were dark, and only a few pearls on the mountain wall flickered with a weak light, and she could barely see the scene in front of her. It was empty and there was nothing. Jiang Jiwan was stunned, and her footsteps suddenly stopped. The surrounding atmosphere was a bit cold, and after staying for a long time, goosebumps involuntarily appeared on her body. She felt an inexplicable fear in her heart and looked around again. It was still empty. Could it be that Chuyu broke through from a rank 8 warrior to a rank 9 warrior here? Jiang Jiwan frowned and felt that something was wrong. This place didn't seem to be anything special. Suddenly her gaze focused. Not far in front, there seemed to be a flash of light. Because the surroundings were very dark, when the light appeared, it immediately attracted Jiang Jiwan's attention. Her hands were tightly clenched into a ball in her sleeves, and her body tensed up as she walked forward. The closer she got, the more she could feel the subtle airflow in the air. The space here was wrong. Many thoughts flashed through her mind quickly. The surrounding air gradually became sticky, and even gradually became laborious. Not long after, she was shocked to find that the force in her body was rapidly depleting. After going through so much, she didn't have much strength left, and now, it was almost exhausted. She hesitated in her heart and wanted to leave, but was afraid that she would miss something. In the end, she could only brace herself and continue forward. Fortunately, she was getting closer and closer to the flickering light. After shortening the distance, she finally saw the thing clearly. She was slightly stunned. That was because the thing that was shining with a faint glow was actually just a shattered piece of rock. This stone was completely black, and it was only the size of a fingernail, and it was quietly suspended in midair. When it rotated gently, it would reflect an extremely faint but gorgeous light. What she saw just now was this. Other than that, this stone was nothing out of the ordinary. There wasn't even a trace of energy fluctuation. Jiang Jiwan slowly frowned. What the hell? How could Chuyu be able to devour the energy of heaven and earth to break through here? But she only saw this mess. She gritted her teeth and unwillingly grabbed the stone in her hand. It was hot to the touch. Ah. Jiang Jiwan threw the stone away and hurriedly looked at her palm. There was already a burn wound on it. Bang. The small stone was thrown to the ground and rolled some distance away. Jiang Jiwan. A clear and bright voice came from behind. Jiang Jiwan was startled and quickly looked back. When she saw the person's face, her heart skipped a beat. Chuyu? When did you get here? Wasn't he still inside the barrier just a moment ago? How could they appear so quietly now? I just got here. Chu Luiyue smiled. Don't worry, I'm later than you. As she spoke, she looked down at the stone that Jiang Jiwan had thrown away and narrowed her eyes dangerously. What's wrong? What are you looking for? Jiang Jiwan took a step back guiltily. No, nothing. I was just curious, so I came to take a look. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath. That sense of familiarity surged again. She couldn't help but sigh softly. Why didn't I notice it before? Taizu. She said silently in her heart. Even though Taizu hadn't woken up yet and couldn't give her any response. Chu Luiyue rubbed the space between her eyebrows with a headache. She was probably the only one in the world who dug up her own ancestral grave. It's really a sin to disturb your peace. Don't worry, I'll get rid of all those messy things right away. Digression. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1378. This is not a place you can come to. Please get out as soon as possible. Chu Luiyue looked at Jiang Jiwan and said calmly but firmly. Jiang Jiwan frowned. Of course she did not agree. Do I have to go out just because you want me to? This isn't your territory. You have no right to order me. Chu Luiyue's lips moved. Not to mention anything else, this place really belonged to her xuanhuan family. However, she couldn't be bothered to argue with Jiang Ziyuan about this. I'll count to 3. If you don't get out, then I'll help. Chu Luiyue said lightly, her eyes turning cold. Jiang Ziyuan felt an inexplicable chill in her heart, but it soon turned into embarrassment and anger. She was a demigod. Compared to Chuyu, she was only stronger. But now she had to listen to him shouting here? How could there be such a logic in the world? Even if she was not as good as Chuyu in some aspects, she was not to be trifled with. Thinking of this, Jiang Jiwan felt a lot more confident. She chuckled, but there was no trace of a smile on her face. Chuyu, I know you're a lot more powerful now, but you're not invincible in the world. You can come to this place but others can't? Are you afraid that I'll snatch some treasure here? While speaking, she kept staring at the young man in front of her, trying to see if there was any secret on his face. Unfortunately, there was none. There was a faint smile on that delicate and clean face, but no one could see what he was thinking. Especially those deep and bright eyes, which perfectly covered all his emotions. It was impossible to guess what he was thinking. For a moment, Jiang Jiwan's heart was beating a little. Even if there was a treasure here, would it have been snatched by Chuyu? Chu Liwei just looked at her quietly, the corners of her mouth slightly raised, and she sneered in her heart. It seemed that the experience in the northern region of the wilderness had exhausted Jiang Jiwan. Now, all her emotions were clearly written on her face, for fear that others could not see it. Even if she wanted a treasure, it was not like this. 1. Chu Liwei raised a finger. Jiang Jiwan's heart skipped a beat, but she also felt a little disgusted. This Chuyu really took himself quite seriously. She turned around and continued to search for something in the empty space. It was clear that she did not intend to pay any attention to Chu Liwei. Chu Liwei raised his eyebrows. 2. Jiang Jiwan turned a deaf ear to him. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. There were only two possibilities for a cultivator to break through consecutively in just a few days. Either that, or he had suddenly obtained an inheritance, which had led to a rapid increase in his cultivation. Either that, or the flow of time in the place he was in was different from the outside world, so in a very short period of time, he was able to achieve results that would take others months or even years to achieve. Judging from the strange sensations around us, it seems to be the second kind. 3. Chu Liwei opened his red lips slightly and spat out this word coldly. Looking at Jiang Jiwan, who was walking freely inside and did not take her words to heart, Chu Liwei smiled slightly. Since she was stubborn, there was no need to show mercy. Bang! Elder Huafeng and the others had just rushed over. Before they could say anything, they saw a figure fly out of the door and fall heavily to the ground. Oh! Jiang Jiwan suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face was pale. Shiruer, who was standing in front, took a step back in disgust. Although her body was covered in dust and blood, and she was in a very sorry state, being stained with Jiang Jiwan's blood still made her feel very uncomfortable. No one went forward to help Jiang Jiwan. Elder Huafeng glanced inside. Chuyu? Chu Liwei slowly walked out and clapped his hands. Senior Sister Jiang, I've already warned you earlier, but you refused to listen. Don't blame me. Everyone looked at each other. This Chuyu was really bold. He didn't even avoid this matter. However, Jiang Jiwan had already been abandoned by Lingxiao College, so others naturally wouldn't be polite to her. When Jiang Jiwan heard this, she was so angry that her internal organs churned, and she almost couldn't breathe. Chuyu, don't go too far. This place doesn't belong to you. You have no right to treat me like this. Chu Liwei glanced at her lazily. Senior Sister Jiang, don't you understand the principle of the strong being respected? If you want to stay, it's very simple. Just come in as long as you can stay. After Chu Liwei finished speaking, he raised his eyebrows slightly and said to Elder Huafeng and the others, Elder, I still have some things to deal with, so I'll go in first. I'll have to trouble you and everyone to wait for a moment. After saying that, she turned around without waiting for Elder Huafeng's reply. After taking a step, she stopped again and turned her head slightly to look at Jiang Jiwan with an extremely indifferent gaze. Senior Sister Jiang, I'll be waiting for you at any time. As soon as she finished speaking, her figure quickly disappeared behind the door. A silver barrier quickly appeared and sealed the entrance of the door. At the same time, it also isolated everything inside. Although everyone couldn't see anything from the outside, Jiang Jiwan was humiliated in public, and she was simply furious. However, she was currently riddled with injuries and could barely stand up. How could she rush over and ask for an explanation for herself? Her cultivation level was indeed higher than Chuyu's. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be a problem for her to suppress the other party. However, after experiencing those things previously, she didn't have much strength left. On the other hand, Chuyu was completely unharmed. Moreover, he had just broken through and was at his strongest state. Wasn't it obvious who would win and who would lose in such a situation? Behind them, the others who had rushed over saw this scene and were all stunned on the spot. Jean D couldn't help but frown and ask in a deep voice, Huafeng, what does Chuyu mean by this? Could it be that he intends to monopolize this place and not let us in? Previously, because of the sudden appearance of the fake heavenly square sacred cauldron, everyone's attention was attracted, so no one paid attention to this place. But now they remembered that this might be the place where the real treasure was hidden. Chuyu's attitude was also very suspicious, and it couldn't help but make people suspicious. Elder Huafeng sneered. You didn't come for so long before, but now that Chuyu is back, you all remember? Jianghu didn't care about these sarcastic words and raised his foot to walk forward. Since the door is already open, we have to go in and take a look. However, just as he took a few steps, he heard a cold voice coming from inside the door. From now on, no one is allowed to enter this place again. If anyone wants to give it a try, just come. Arrogant. Arrogant. Because of shock, almost everyone's eyes widened as they looked at each other. Jianghu couldn't help but let out a ha. What a good Chuyu. Aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? Today I'd like to see how long you can guard this place. As he spoke, he waved his arm and a golden spear appeared in his hand. The spear pierced through the air. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1379. Jianghu threw the spear directly at the broken hole on the door. His previous experience told him that this door was not so easy to deal with. To be on the safe side, he still chose the easiest position to break through. But soon he found that his idea was really childish and ridiculous. That was because the gun was stopped 3 steps away from the door by the tyrannical aura from above. It was firmly blocked outside. Jianghu's face changed. He quickly stepped forward, grabbed the handle of the spear and stabbed forward with all his strength. Nothing moved. There seemed to be an invisible iron wall in front of him, isolating everything easily. He tried his best, but he still couldn't even leave a ripple. It was ridiculous. Jianghu's face flushed red. He was angry. Cunning. He tried twice and found that he couldn't continue, so he simply chose to give up. He turned around and shouted angrily at Elder Huafeng, Huafeng, is this how Lingxiao College teaches students? Elder Huafeng raised his eyebrows high, and his expression became a little strange. He looked at the huge hole in the door that was still extremely sturdy, then looked at Jianghu, who was flustered and exasperated, and curled his lips. Jianghu, it seems to be your fault that you can't get in, right? He didn't have the ability, but he still wanted to push the blame to others. Moreover, the other party was a youth. What was this? Wasn't that a little too shameless? Although the remaining 2 sentences were not said, Elder Huafeng's eyes and expression had already surpassed all words. Jianghu's eyes were wide open, and there seemed to be 2 balls of burning anger in his eyes. His chest rose and fell violently. Huafeng, don't go too far. Are we the ones who are going too far? Elder Huafeng simply found a stone to lean against, crossed his arms and looked relaxed. We're not stopping you. What do you want to do? Just do it directly. As he spoke, he seemed to think that it was not enough, and he waved at the crowd beside him. Everyone of Lingxiao College, listen up, rest here. If anyone still wants to break through the door, we don't need to pay attention to them. Just watch from the side. Everyone responded in unison, yes. Jianghu was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Watch from the side. Wasn't it obvious that they wanted to see him make a fool of himself? However, he just couldn't open the door. Even if there was a huge hole in it. What a great humiliation. Golden Flute took back his spear and spat on the ground. He didn't turn around and leave. Instead, he just stood there and stared at the flickering barrier. There must be something wrong here. No matter what, he was still a dignified high god powerhouse. How could he be so easily stopped by the barrier of a 9th-stage warrior? The rest of the onlookers were originally a little restless, but after seeing his series of circumstances, they all settled down and decided to wait and see. Thus, for various reasons, the area in front of the door quickly quieted down. Other than the strange atmosphere, everything else was normal. Elder Huafeng sneered and closed his eyes. It had always been Chuyu taking advantage of others. He had never seen anyone being able to get anything back from Chuyu. To deal with him. How rare. Just look at how ugly Jianghu's face was. How refreshing. Thinking of this, Elder Huafeng inexplicably felt a little proud in his heart. The students of Lingxiao College were indeed extraordinary. Chuyu's ability to cause trouble is really amazing. An elder next to him couldn't help but laugh softly. They had always been at odds with the Golden Wing sect. Of course, they were very happy to see the other party suffer. Shiru's eyes flashed and she asked hesitantly. Elder Huafeng, Don't you think that Chu Yu is really similar to that person in some ways? Elder Huafeng's expression froze, and he immediately looked at the door with a complicated gaze. Behind the flickering silver barrier was everything that no one knew. He didn't speak. If it wasn't for this, why would he have taken care of Chu Yu since he entered the academy? Not to mention this time he was in a daze and directly brought Chu Yu to the northern border of the wilderness. Even if he knew that it was extremely dangerous, according to Chu Yu's identity, he should firmly refuse. But he didn't. Wasn't it because of those eyes that were very similar and, it's all in the past? Elder Huafeng closed his eyes. There's no need to mention it again. That girl, she didn't even reply to a message for so long. Who knew where she had gone? As long as she didn't come back, they wouldn't mention her. Sure, Rui wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she only nodded slightly. Huff. After isolating herself from the outside world, Chu Luiyue returned to the tomb. She stood in the middle and looked around at the empty surroundings. She couldn't help but sigh softly. Then she lifted the hem of her clothes and knelt down. She bowed her head and kowtowed to the tombstone. Taizu Yuo was wrong. Please punish me. No one responded. Chu Luiyue lowered her head to the ground. After a while she straightened up. Taizu seemed to still be asleep and showed no signs of waking up. This made Chu Luiyue a little worried, but she also faintly looked forward to it. Now she was basically sure that this was Taizu's real tomb. Then it was very likely that Taizu's last incomplete soul was hidden here. If she could gather it, Chu Luiyue thought for a moment and took out the jade pendant. In the dark space, the jade pendant emitted 2 balls of faint light, like flowing water slowly surging within. Unfortunately, it didn't fuse. These were the 2 incomplete parts of Taizu's soul. Chu Luiyue had already gathered them together, but she hadn't been able to fuse them. She didn't know if the last part was also here. Chu Luiyue clenched the jade pendant tightly and frowned slightly. According to the legendary three-eyed eagle, the great ancestor had fought fiercely against the 9 giant dragons by himself back then. Even the most inferior bloodline of the dragon race was more than enough to deal with the human race. Taizu could fight 9 dragons alone and even use 9 dragon bones to suppress his tomb in the end. Then how strong was he back then? Why did the incomplete soul in the Tianling god realm always think that it was still stuck at the demigod realm and couldn't break through? Also, Taizu was so familiar with the primordial north region. What did he do here back then? Taizu, wake up quickly. Chu Luiyue closed her eyes, clasped her hands in front of her, and prayed silently. Now she only hoped that Taizu would be safe. She didn't know if the broken tombstone would affect Taizu. Chu Luiyue felt guilty at the thought of this. Hopefully that tombstone, boom. A loud sound suddenly came from the mountain wall above her head. The entire tomb trembled violently. Chu Luiyue suddenly stood up. A cold and gloomy aura was rapidly approaching. Her heart trembled. It's coming with ill intentions. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1380. The people waiting outside were even more shocked than Chu Luiyue. Most of them were thinking about how to choose. Should they continue to wait patiently or think of a way to break in? In fact, everyone was ready to make a move, but what happened before was enough to calm them down and strive to find the best solution. However, no one had expected that before they could think of anything, someone had already barged in and made a move first. In the sky above, several figures in black robes attacked and directly attacked the people below. Elder Huafeng tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and quickly flew up. Who are you? There were about 7 or 8 people on the other side. All of them had their faces covered. However, the aura on their bodies was very strong. All of them were high gods. Especially the man at the front. His figure was a little bent and he seemed to be an old man. His aura was obscure and it was impossible to see his strength at all. Elder Huafeng's heart sank. The other party had just broken in directly. They were probably prepared. These people didn't pay any attention to Elder Huafeng. They just kept attacking downwards as if they wanted to collapse the entire tomb. Gotcha. A huge crack appeared on the stone at the top. Elder Huafeng's expression changed. Before he could say anything, he saw a figure rushing out from below. Slender and agile, it was Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue gently nodded at Elder Huafeng. Elder Huafeng hesitated for a moment and took a few steps back. But his heart was still full of worry. He stared at the 2 sides in front of him without blinking. Chu Luiyue stood in the air, facing the other party from a distance. She quickly glanced at the other party and found that she didn't know these people. However, the chilling aura on their bodies was somewhat familiar. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and suddenly smiled. May I know everyone's names and why have you all come here? The leading old man's voice was cold and indifferent. My master wants to see you. Chu Luiyue was stunned at first, but then she raised her eyebrows slightly. Who is your master? If you want to see me, you have to tell me your identity, right? You don't have the right to ask. The old man didn't seem to put Chu Luiyue in his eyes at all. Every word he said could not be disobeyed. Just come with us. Otherwise, everyone here will pay the price for your choice. The old man's tone was flat, as if he was just stating an ordinary matter. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Taizu was now at a critical juncture. If she left, she didn't know what would happen. However, the old man's second sentence quickly made Chu Luiyue change his mind. Don't worry, one of your old acquaintances is also here. You haven't seen each other for a long time. It's time to visit him. Chu Luiyue clenched his fists. Oh. The old man gave her a meaningful look. Mu Qinghe. Chu Luiyue immediately said, I'll go with you. Chu Yu. Elder Hua Feng was shocked and hurriedly tried to dissuade him. Chu Yu, think twice. These people were obviously not good people. Wouldn't it be dangerous to go with them? At that time it would be difficult to escape. Chu Luiyue shook her head gently. Elder Hua Feng, I have to go this time. Don't worry, I know what to do. Seeing her determined attitude, Elder Hua Feng opened his mouth, but in the end he could only shake his head and sigh. Who exactly was that Mu Qinghe? When Chu Yu heard this name, his expression changed. He even ignored the danger and wanted to leave with them. If something were to happen to him, Chu Luiyue looked at the old man. Let's go. The few of them surrounded Chu Luiyue and flew towards the depths of the northern region of the primordial world. Their figures quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. When they were sure that they could no longer be seen, the onlookers looked at Elder Hua Feng and the others with subtle expressions. Which family was that just now? I can't tell, but he's not weak, especially the one who spoke. I'm afraid that not many of us here are his match. But he doesn't seem to be from the aristocratic families of the Divine Ruins world. Why did they call Chu Yu away? They even said that they were meeting an old friend. Who is that Mu Qinghe? Everyone discussed animatedly, but they were all confused. Shurer looked at Elder Hua Feng and couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Elder, are we really just going to watch? What if Chu Yu? He's obviously not a match for those people. What if something happened to him if he followed him? Elder Hua Feng closed his eyes. Chu Yu means that we shouldn't follow him. He might have other plans. But his strength is limited and he's alone. What other plans can he have? Shurer frowned. Chu Yu had saved her before, so she had always been very grateful to him. She absolutely couldn't bear to see anything happen to him. Elder Hua Feng was about to say something when he suddenly felt something. He flipped his palm and took out a green jade token. This was Elder Bo Yan's. The light spot on it suddenly burst out with a dazzling light. A powerful summon came from it. Elder Hua Feng was surprised and happy. Bo Yan is looking for us. Hearing this, everyone from Lingxiao College rushed over. The expressions of the elders were especially tense. Really? Don't make a mistake like last time, right? After all, they had already suffered a loss once. Elder Hua Feng clenched the green jade token in his hand. No, it's true this time. Because this was a signal that would only be sent out when the owner of the green jade token was in danger of life and death. Bo Yin and the other's situation was not optimistic. As soon as these words were said, everyone looked at each other and fell silent. Then on one side was Chu Yu and on the other side was Bo Yin and the others. It was really difficult to choose. Elder Hua Feng clenched his fists. After thinking for a long time, he finally gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Let's go find Bo Yan and the others first. As for Chu Yu, since he dared to go, he must have the confidence to come back. Moreover, those people who had appeared just now were very powerful. Only by finding the other people in the college would they have a chance of winning. If they rashly went now, it would be useless. After making the decision, the people of Lingxiao College quickly gathered and left together without any reluctance. The remaining people, Jin Di and the others, were stunned. They all left just like that? First, Chu Yu was taken away and then the people of Lingxiao College quickly left. Did they really not want to stay here anymore? He couldn't help but look at the huge tomb, but he was shocked to find that the silver barrier was still there. He gritted his teeth and looked at the crowd. Everyone who else wants to go in, please take a step forward. Let's do it together. If we find any treasures inside, we'll split them equally. What do you think? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1381. Many people sneered in their hearts. Divide equally? That was pure nonsense. None of the people present were vegetarians. If they really saw the treasure, how could they obediently wait for it to be divided equally? When the time came, they would definitely fight. They might even fight to the death. However, judging from Chu Yu's attitude earlier, there might really be something here. It was not impossible to work together to break this barrier first. I'll do it. I'll do it too. Almost everyone expressed their agreement one after another. Therefore, after a short discussion, everyone present began to work together. They tried their best to break that barrier. Chu Luiyue, who had already gone far away, turned back to take a look. Even though she couldn't see anything here, she could roughly guess what the situation was on the other side of the tomb. She only hoped that the barrier left behind by Taizu was strong enough to hold on for a while. It's right in front. The old man in the lead said indifferently. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. She immediately retracted her gaze and looked forward. It was a snowfield. Crystal clear snowflakes piled up into a thick layer. It was the darkest time of the night. Even the ice and snow looked much colder than during the day. She stood still with the few people in front of her. Then the old man stepped forward alone. Chu Luiyue stood behind him. She could only see his hands dancing. Soon the snow on the ground quickly melted. A large open space was revealed. She looked over, and her heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something. With just a glance, she could tell that there was another mystery under the ground. Sure enough, the old man flew down and knocked twice on the ground. Click, with an extremely soft sound, an entrance appeared on the ground. It was pitch black and nothing could be seen. There was a trace of heart-palpitating coldness. No one knew what was down there. Please? The old man turned around and glanced at Chu Luiyue extremely coldly. Miss Xuanhuan. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. As expected. When they said Mu Qinghe's name, she guessed that they already knew her identity. This was also the reason why she had chosen to follow him. Nowadays, not many people knew about her true identity. Even Jiang Jiwan only had suspicions, but was unable to confirm them. However, these people seemed to be very confident. Moreover, what they knew was obviously more than she had expected. Without any hesitation, Chu Luiyue flew down and walked to the entrance. She looked down only to see a cold and dark staircase. She lifted her foot and walked down. Bang! Not long after she went down, those people closed the entrance again. To Chu Luiyue's surprise, they did not follow him down. This made her heart sink. Because this didn't mean that they had let down their guard against her. On the contrary, only if there was an existence more powerful than them down there would they be so relieved to leave and let her come in alone. It was lonely and cold, dark and cramped. Only the sound of Chu Luiyue's footsteps echoed in the entire space. Soon she saw a person. She couldn't be more familiar with that figure. He sat on the ground and leaned against the wall, motionless. His hands and feet were chained and he was locked in that small space. His clothes were a little disheveled and stained with blood. His breathing was weak and he looked very miserable. If it weren't for the slight rise and fall of his chest, Chu Luiyue would have thought that he was dead. Mu Qinghe. She paused for a moment and spoke softly. Hearing her voice, the man who had his head lowered finally moved. He looked up hesitantly. When he saw Chu Luiyue, a trace of confusion flashed across his eyes. But soon he recognized Chu Luiyue's identity. His pale and cracked lips trembled slightly, as if there were many things he wanted to say. But in the end he just lowered his eyes again. Greetings, Your Highness. Chu Luiyue walked down the stairs and stood there for a long while, looking at Mu Qinghe. If it weren't for his response, she wouldn't have dared to confirm that this emaciated and haggard man in front of her was the high-spirited and proud Mu Qinghe who had followed her for many years. Somehow, when she saw this scene, she felt as if her heart had been hit by something and she felt a little sour. She didn't know if it was for him or for herself. In the past they had fought side by side. But today it was as if they were facing each other with swords. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and looked around. Then she focused her gaze. Right in the middle there was a huge bronze mirror. The appearance of the copper mirror was extremely familiar. She stared at it for a few seconds and suddenly, an idea flashed across her mind. This was exactly the same bronze mirror she saw in the Crown Prince's study in the Baiming dynasty. Shengguan Yu. A low and hoarse voice suddenly came from the bronze mirror. Chu Luiyue's eyes moved slightly, and the corners of her lips lifted slightly. At this time, Your Highness still won't show your true self? The other party chuckled. It seems that you're very curious about me. Chu Luiyue's smile deepened. Mu Qinghe is actually one of your people, right? If I'm not wrong, Jiang Yuqing seems to be of the same status? You're as smart as before. The other party chose to admit it openly. Obviously, he was very confident and wasn't afraid of Chu Luiwei causing any trouble here. Smart people always make smart choices. I'm sure you know why I've invited you here today. Chu Luiwei narrowed her eyes and raised her eyebrows. Sorry, I don't know. Please enlighten me. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.